Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, Karen sells me her house. Now she's demanding to buy it back. A couple of years ago, my wife and I bought a house from Pearl, not her real name. Pearl and her husband moved across the country for her husband's job. It's a beautiful house, and they put a lot of work into fixing it up. Everything was going okay for a while. Pearl would message us now and then. My wife grew up in a house next to Pearl's family. She would ask about how things were going, if we enjoyed the house, etc. At one point, she asked if she could see the house the next time she was in town, visiting family or something, and show some friends what it looked like with the renovations. We thought it was odd, but we would have allowed it. She never did end up visiting, so nothing came of it. This was just the beginning of some weird stuff. Almost a year ago, someone accidentally used our address to list their house on Zillow. It was a simple error of using an N instead of an S on the same road. Anyways, I guess Pearl's husband saw the listing and he got excited that we were selling the house. We know this because Pearl messaged us asking us about the house and if we were selling. We told her no, we weren't the ones who had listed it. Pearl continues to send us messages such as, "Oh, that's too bad. My husband got really excited about maybe moving back to that house because we love it so much and life on this side of the country isn't as good as we thought it would be." Stuff like that. Eventually, she stopped messaging us. Next thing we know, a couple months later, we find out that Pearl and her family have moved back into town but are staying at a rental. She starts messaging us asking what price we would like to sell them the house for. We give them an amount that's a fair price according to the housing market. Pearl says that it's out of their budget and can't justify paying that, mixed with a few comments about how they cut us a deal when they sold it to us. I want to mention that she lied to our faces twice during the sale, claiming that the house had an AC when it didn't, and how they didn't have dogs, even though we could still smell dogs in the carpet that we had to replace, found dog toys in the air vents, and dog hair in the wall paint, so her deal wasn't as good as she likes to make it out to be. She goes radio silent for a while. Cut to 2 weeks ago. Due to some financial hardships, my wife and I are forced to put our house up for sale. We list the house, and of course, Pearl sees the legitimate listing. She makes a few comments about wanting to move into the house again and how the price is higher than what we paid her. We kindly let her know that this is our asking price, and if she's interested, she can make an offer through a realtor. Silence for a while, other than passive-aggressive comments on the community Facebook post about how she misses her old house. Now we have someone interested in buying the house, and he put forward an offer. We're waiting for funding and inspections to come through. Who messages us last night? Pearl. She comments on how we got to enjoy the renovations longer than she did, and other stuff to make us feel sorry for her. She asks if we're under contract, and we tell her we are. She asks with who. We say that it's not anyone we know personally, and we don't feel like disclosing that. She asks how much they offered. We tell her we got a fair offer. She keeps pushing. We let her know that we aren't comfortable letting her know. She's gone silent for now, but I'm sure we'll hear something from her again real soon, maybe once the house is sold. She's just so annoying. I get being attached to a house, but this is becoming borderline harassment. Edit. Thanks for the support, everyone. I have a problem setting boundaries with people, and I worry that I overreact to stuff like this, so it's nice to read about people in my corner. We will be going no contact, and if she tries it again, we will redirect her to our agent. If she keeps it up, we'll look into legal action. Why are you not blocking her number in social media? Quit driving yourself batty and ignore this woman. You owe her nothing. Would I be the jerk if I don't change my son's name, even though it may cause him to lose an inheritance? I, 24, female, got pregnant while I was taking a gap year traveling. I met a guy. I was 19 and he was 23. We had fun. I was working in a bar to make money while I explored his city. When I got pregnant, he lost interest really quickly. I understood, but I still chose to keep it. I went home and had my son. I also made sure to get child support. He could afford it. He did fight it though. I had to prove paternity and everything. Through that, his parents found out. They are well off. They've met my son and they truly do seem to love him. They've provided gifts for his birthday and Christmas. They helped me with extra money so I could complete my university without going into debt. They've taken us on vacation with them so they could spend time with him. They aren't my biggest fans, but we are cordial to each other. 3 months ago, my son's father passed. He was drunk at his bachelor party, tripped on the sidewalk and hit his head, and that was all she wrote. My son and I attended the funeral. We spent a week in that city so his grandparents could see him. They approached me with an offer. They had no other kids or grandkids. Their son was only 28, so he had lots of time to provide them legitimate kids. They did not say this, I'm just assuming, so they never thought about my son's name. They said that if I changed his surname to theirs legally, they would make him their primary heir. I think this is dumb. He's their only grandson, and they would deny him an inheritance because of his last name? I said I would consider it to be polite, and I've left it at that. I actually have a pretty good life as it is. My family has been very supportive, and because of the whole court thing, my son's father had to have life insurance with him as the beneficiary. Would it be nice for my kid to get a big sum of money? Yes. Do I want him to have the surname of a man who didn't want him to see him or love him? No. I've been talking to my family about it, and a few of them think I'm being a jerk for giving up this kind of money for my son. It's generational wealth, and I'm making the decision based on emotion. I think they're jerks for thinking money is the only thing that matters. I think I'll tell my son's grandparents that they can talk to him about it when he turns 16. He will be old enough to understand the implications, but young enough to not be tied professionally to his last name. I get where you're coming from in this sense that you aren't fond of him having a name that is tied to his dad who didn't want anything to do with him. However, I just want to give you some things to think about. His paternal grandparents did want a relationship with him and have helped out, so the last name is also tied to them who do want him in their life. You're looking at this as they will totally deny him an inheritance because of his last name, but they didn't say they would exclude him altogether. They said he would be the primary heir. Maybe that means without the last name that all property will be sold and all money will be split with other family members, charities, etc. But if he has their last name, that all properties and most money will go to him with little splitting of the money to anyone else. You think that you can wait until he's 16, but that's 11 years away. What if something happens to them before then? How do you think your son will feel if he doesn't get this and finds out he could have had generational wealth and never would have had to worry about money and all you had to do was simply change his last name? I mean, personally, if someone had told my mom that I could get generational wealth as long as she changed my last name and my mom didn't and I found out, I'd be mad that my mom didn't rename me. I accidentally bought a bat-infested mansion. My wife and I live in Washington State. We are young parents, born last November, and we're very desperate to buy a home and get set up to raise our kid. The place we were living in had a half-acre but was a trailer, so it was small and full of problems. Most of the houses in our area are above $800,000 for a postage stamp lot where you can lean out your window and touch your neighbor's house, so we looked outside our area. I have a fully remote job, so we picked a spot close to our favorite state park. The home we bought for $870,000, 20% down. It's a huge Victorian mansion on top of a hill with a big turret and a view of the water. The inspection showed a lot of projects, but nothing we couldn't handle over the course of a decade or more. Once my wife returns to work, it would be possible to burn down the equity and finance improvements. One thing in my report was evidence of rodents in the attic. We've dealt with rats and mice before by setting traps and thought very little of the problem. My mom talked about having squirrels in her attic that they had to shut out. Not a big deal. So, despite some hesitation about the repairs and fixes that might lie ahead, we bought the place. We closed on April 1st and moved in by mid-month. It was amazing. The location is incredible. We have guests in May, no problems. Then, towards the end of the month, we get a bat in our room at night. I quickly catch it in a bucket and I get it out through the window while wife and baby get out. I learn later that I should have kept it. We think we're close to the woods. This is just what happens sometimes if a window is open a crack. Then we have a guest staying in the bedroom in the furnished attic. They hear scrawling in the walls. We start hearing it while we're up there, where we put the TV in a futon. It's a carpeted living room type space up there. So we stake out the house and we see a horde of bats fly out from a tiny gap in the corner of our attic window dormer. We immediately call as many pest companies as we can and reach out to our insurance agent. I have work travel and come back. We have friends come to visit. We all get incredibly sick. Probably not associated to the bats, but histoplasmosis isn't impossible. At first, we are very concerned about the bats, but we think this might be addressable. Then it starts getting even crazier. Early July, after a week of being super ill, the first bat company comes. They review the house, tell us it's one of the worst infestations they've ever seen. There are likely thousands of bats, which means chances are high that a few of them do carry rabies. Also, that much fecal matter will definitely become a human health hazard even if it's above the drywall, because it will fester, mold, get wet, and drip through. The next day, another bat gets into the kitchen in the middle of the day while we're cooking. I catch it with my fishing net and squash it. The bat pest person told us to take it to the health department, so I did, but it ended up being too far gone to tell if it had rabies. Live bats are required. My wife is too concerned to keep staying there. She packs up baby and goes to live at my sister's. Our original house we had intended to either rent or sell to a developer, but everything happens in slow motion with a baby under one. Now we had to relocate back into it. I stay up in the house to deal with contractors in the health department. I'm still extremely sick, cough and sore throat. My wife and baby start their rabies exposure series per the health department. We're set to max out our insurance coverage costs. Even with coverage, we will end up paying $14,000 in medical expenses. So we start talking with the neighbors. Some of them even stake out the house with me while I take video of thousands of bats flying out. The health department comes to try and capture a live one. They can't get to one though. None are loose inside the house. They're all stuck behind drywall and plyboard panels and enmeshed into the insulation. I open up all the crawl space doors and seal the attic shut. Then I come out and there are 6 in the attic. I catch one and bring it to the health department. Now here we are, evacuated, living on 1/4 of our personal goods. Back to our trailer. During this time, we've been coordinating with lawyers, insurance, pest control, various contractors. I say this all in the context of not wanting to live in that home anymore. We love the neighborhood, but feel that this place is going to be a complete and absolute money pit. With enough love, attention, and improvement, and changes to the Fed's rates, we could probably sell it for $1.1 million or higher if it was proven bat-free, repainted, and some other aesthetic work was done. But it would take $150,000 to $200,000 to get there, so it would virtually be a wash. With the market teetering in a million stupid directions and the scale of severity of this problem, we are losing our minds. At least we have good Halloween costumes picked out this year. Update. We're just chugging along, still trying to piece together any semblance of a plan while struggling to keep our sanity. It's a lot of small steps, one at a time, and a lot of stress, and 12 ER visits to get all of our rabies shots. The expertise of some of you Redditors was astounding. Not a ton of help on figuring out our method to finance this, and I'll also point out $450,000 on our old place is a stretch. We'd be lucky to get above $360,000 without a lot of work. There's also a lot of family resistance to selling, as my mother owned it and lived in it after her divorce, and it's her fallback plan if her current spouse dies. Long story there too. Luckily, the Department of Fish and Wildlife does have some ways they can help. Not financially. They can help us get permitting and design for bat houses that can be put up in the state park. Our other neighbors are supportive of this too, because it would take bat pressure away from their houses too. The toughest thing we're dealing with though is anger and depression. Luckily, we also have an amazing little dude, our baby, who keeps us smiling no matter how bleak things get. I'm also finding it hard to be 100% committed to work and struggling to keep ahead of the opinions and office politics that my position has to contend with for success. My boss is very understanding, but I can tell this has definitely set me back a bit in a few ways. We are also pursuing a few other creative ventures to raise funds, but I don't want to break subreddit rules, so I'm leaving them off this update. If anyone is a good book editor or interior designer with art skills, please reach out. The world is indeed comic, but the joke is on mankind. I feel like I'm falling into a Lovecraftian madness. My dad is setting ridiculous rules for me if I want to move back in with him. I'm 22, male, and my dad remarried about 5 years ago. I lived with him until shortly beforehand, and then I moved in with my mom. My dad's wife has a son that's 38, and he needed a place to stay last year, and he declined because he didn't want someone that old living with them. I've had an apartment the last 3 years with roommates. I was going to the local college, but stopped about December of 2021, so I've been working a couple of jobs. I have a car and 2 roommates. We shared a 2-bedroom apartment. They both decided to move out with their girlfriends, so I need a place to stay. Plus, I can't afford an apartment plus tuition. Well, I want to get back in school and save up money for a new place. I asked my dad if I can move in with them. He got back to me last week and said I can move in on Labor Day weekend. He provided me the following rules. I can't have girls in the house, pull up in the driveway or cul-de-sac. No guy friends in the house after 8 p.m. or before 10 a.m. unless driving me to work or class. I can't drink or smoke. He can test me for this anytime he chooses. I have to cut the grass, shovel the snow, and complete a weekly grocery store run for his wife. I must attend class every day that I'm scheduled. I have to keep my own car and I can't borrow his or his wife's. I have a midnight curfew. Exception is if I get off work after 11 p.m., then I have 2 hours to get home. Missing curfew means I can't come home for the evening. Being gone 3 straight days means I have to move out. I have to attend church with him twice a month. If his wife asks me to do something, I need to do it. If she asks me to do something and it makes me uncomfortable, call him and he will handle it. In return, he said he will do the following: pay for 2 courses this semester. If I get a B or better, he will pay for 2 more courses next semester. He will provide me an employee referral at his job so I can get a better position for a second job. The security guards make $22 an hour, but it's overnight shift. It's not guaranteed placement, but several people's kids work overnights as security guards on cleaning crews. 6 months of rent-free living. If I move out January 1st, 2024, he'll give me $5,000 towards a new place. I think my dad should either help or just say no. These rules are absurd. I'm an adult. I have 2 jobs and pay for my own car and insurance. He said I can have guy friends over, but not women. I have a couple of good friends that are women, and it's weird inviting over some of my guy buddies, but not them. His requests are completely controlling. I think he made these rules so I would say no, and if I said yes, if I break the rules, he can kick me out anyways. So, should I request that I'm able to move in until I find a new place in a few months, and these rules are absurd? Yes, some of these rules are a bit daft, but 1. The chores that have been said are fair in lieu of paying rent and a fair contribution to running the household. They're about the sort of life your dad and his wife want to lead. They don't want your friends coming over at all hours and all that. They don't want to meet your girlfriend over breakfast. Moving back home at 22 is more like being in a house sharing arrangement than reverting to being a kid in the family home. They're being very clear with you about how they expect that to work, not unlike a lot of shared households. You're not moving back as a kid, nor staying as a guest. Whether you want to live like that with your parents will depend on how much you can't afford to rent somewhere else instead. You can try telling him that he either gives you a place to stay or he doesn't, but you don't get to kick off if he says, "No worries, we'll keep the guest room then." You're the jerk. Coworker took glucose tabs out of my locker because they taste like candy. About 12 years ago, I worked in security for a high-end resort. It was a small group, and the head of security was a retired police sergeant. He was actually pretty cool and had a really strong sense of right and wrong. We had a fridge in the back, and I would buy things like juice for when I had low sugar. I'm a type 1 diabetic. And snacks to keep my sugar from bottoming out since I walked 5 to 6 miles per shift. My juice disappeared. I replaced it with the same thing and it happened again. I got another one and wrote on it that I don't use cups. It disappeared again. We all had an idea who it was, but couldn't ever catch him. Until I walked in one day and saw the first shift guy making a meal out of my food. I asked him point blank what he was doing eating my food, and he said, "That's what you get for being late." I checked the clock and I was 2 minutes late. He even took food out of my locker and was snacking on my glucose tabs because they taste like candy. Somehow, the head of the department found out what he said and called me in to ask me about it. Seems this dude had been stealing food from the fridge since he started there, and while people weren't happy about it, they were willing to let it go since a lot of people brought food in and thought of it as a community property. This didn't apply to me because they viewed my food as medically necessary, and this was the first time that he went into someone's locker. My boss said this would be handled and dismissed me. When I came in for my next shift, all of this guy's stuff was gone and his locker was empty. My mom also worked there at the time, and I found out that because this guy had served in Iraq, he felt like everyone owed him. He would constantly come in late to work, pawn his work off on other people, and was the only one who didn't contribute to the communal fridge. If you needed to type up an incident report, you had to wait for him to finish browsing the internet on the office computer. We only had one at the time. I ran into him about 6 months after he was let go while I was doing laundry, and right as I was approaching the big machine, I was doing mine and then my boyfriend's laundry, he jumped in front of me and took it. This guy might be the most entitled jerk I've ever encountered. Edit. I told my mom about this post, and there was more that happened before I started. I normally wouldn't have added anything because it was already more than enough, but this was crazy. I guess he used to try to bring his enormous husky into the office with him, but the boss said he couldn't do that. Okay, the dog isn't in the office anymore. But less than a few hours later, the office received a report about a dog that was out in the car. He left him out there. What? I have 2 dogs. One we rescued just last December and he's 12. I wouldn't ever do something like that. When boss man pretty much asked him what the heck and said he can't do that, it's cruel. The guy said he wanted his dog near him but was told he couldn't bring him to work. Again, what the heck? Manager says I cannot clock out unless I get cleared by a manager. So to get started, some context. I work as a technician that does jobs in residential homes. We get several jobs on our routes at the beginning of the day. After we're done with our jobs, we send a message to our manager and the route service rep. If I'm done early and another tech is running behind, they will send that job to me. If there are no jobs left to be covered, we're cleared and we can head home. We also work 4 10-hour shift days, with the option to pick up a 5th day for overtime and choose between a half or a full day. Now on to the story. I like picking up 5th days for a little extra overtime. On one of the days I picked up, I had a family dinner I didn't want to miss, so I made it a half day. It was a busy day, and I didn't get to my last job until around 2:30. Lucky for me, the customer wasn't home and the job was rescheduled. I messaged my manager and route service rep that I was done. I was cleared by the service rep, but not the manager. I didn't think much about it since I was meant to be off 2 hours earlier, and they never add more jobs to you after your scheduled shift. So I just headed back to the office and clocked out and made it to my family dinner. The next day I worked, I opened my work phone to find a message from my manager an hour after I clocked out that day stating, "You are not allowed to clock out unless cleared by a manager." At first I was like, uh-oh, I must have forgotten to add him to the message. I checked, and no, I definitely added him, and it shows he saw my message. So I took a screenshot of both messages and thought to myself, alright, I'll maliciously comply. If I don't get cleared, I won't clock out. So every day since then, I made sure I was cleared by a manager. Honestly, most of the time, all managers are really good at being on top of this, so I didn't think I would ever get to take advantage of this malicious compliance. But about a month later, I finally got my chance. On this fateful day, it was a busy one, and it was winter and we were getting some bad snow. I had several big jobs and was behind schedule. Finally, after finishing my last job at almost 8 p.m., I messaged my manager, the same one that gave me that rule, and the route service rep that I was done. I started heading back, wanting to get out of the snow and get home. I got home at about 8:30 and I still wasn't cleared by my manager, so I didn't clock out. I messaged him again, asked him if he can clear me so I can clock out. No answer. I said and debated how much I can milk this. After all, I do get paid hourly. Well, I didn't want to take it too far, so I ended up calling him just before 9. He picked up confused. I told him I've been waiting for him to clear me. Still confused, he responded, "Yeah, of course I cleared." I remind him that he instructed me to not clock out until after I was cleared by a manager. Then I thanked him, hung up, and noted in the message that I called the manager and was cleared. It's been several months since then, and to this day, that manager still sticks to everything he says. And to this day, I still milk an extra 15 to 30 minutes of pay every time a manager forgets to clear me before I remind them. Wife's ex-affair partner sent her flowers at work, and she decided to keep them. I, 38 male, am upset that my wife, 38 female, kept flowers sent to her work from the guy she had an affair with. The affair ended 6 months ago, and I felt that we were finally getting to a place where I don't actively distrust her. She's a teacher, and they were delivered yesterday, her first day with students for the semester. She called me between classes to thank me for sending her black roses and wanted to know what they symbolized to me. She was excited, genuinely excited, and I was confused. When I explained that I didn't send them, she got really quiet and her tone and mood dramatically dropped. I asked if he sent them, and she said she didn't know, there's no note, but if it wasn't me, she didn't know who else would send them. I told her if they're from him to not accept them, to which she responded she already accepted the delivery and doesn't know who they're from. Cue the start of her next class, and we don't talk about it again for the day. I did not specifically tell her to throw them away or anything like that, but I felt like my "you can't accept those if they're from him" set my expectation clearly. I had already planned a mini celebration for that afternoon when she got home. I had already bought her flowers for the house, cooked her favorite dinner, and bought her something she wanted for her classroom. We had a great afternoon, and the flowers at her work didn't show up. Today, she sends me a picture of her class, related to a text conversation we were having, and almost off frame, I can see the flowers on her desk. I ask if that's what I'm seeing. She confirms. I ask if he sent them. She said he had sent her a text message later that day confirming that they were from him. At this point, I'm like, what? Why would you keep them? She basically says they're just flowers. She doesn't care about them at all, and you know how much I like flowers, and I've never gotten flowers at work before, so I just decided to pretend they're from you. Then, when I push back, she tells me I never made it clear I expected her to throw them away, but she says she will, and shortly thereafter sends me a picture of them and bent up and stuffed into her small trash can. I'm very upset about this, but not sure if I'm blowing this out of proportion in my own mind. I'm fairly confident she's not been talking to him and that she has not been around him. She's had her location on her phone on since I decided to give this another chance. I don't check her phone, I don't have the passcode, and I told her I didn't want it when she offered. that if I wanted to go through her phone, I'd do it in front of her. I'm wishing I could silently check her phone right now. This will start a fight if I demand to check it when she gets home. Edit. She came home after work rather upset. Usually I'm the calm one, but honestly, I was just seeing red. We had a heated discussion where I rehashed my position and she told me my feelings about it were nonsense, they were just stupid flowers, as she rolled her eyes. Then I told her this wasn't working for me. I actually meant the way she was treating me on how I felt about the flowers, but she took it to mean our reconciliation and stormed out of the house with a few of her things. In a later phone call, I offloaded a lot of crap. Most of it she deserved, but some of it she really didn't. I got a text from one of her teacher friends that she was at her house. She called me this morning while driving to work, and I really wanted her to apologize. She ended up telling me her cheating wasn't just her fault and that I had some part in it too. While I'm fine admitting I'm not perfect and there are areas I can improve, I sure as heck am not responsible for your cheating. I don't yell, like ever, but I yelled at her this morning. Then I blocked her for most of the day. I'm done with her. I actually hired a lawyer during the affair and we've signed an MSA. I had asked the lawyer not to send the final decree for signature after she asked for a second chance. I called him at lunch and told him to send it. He wasn't surprised to hear from me, unfortunately. Honestly, the fact that she kept his phone number and didn't block him is a huge red flag. That would be a must for me. He's showing he still has interest, and she's not doing anything to let him know she's not interested. Hopefully, you're already in therapy. If not, it's necessary for both of you if you plan to stay with her. How should I, male 45, deal with my wife, who's 47, who would prefer working for minimum wage instead of using her law degree? Important background. My wife has chronic fatigue syndrome. She worked full-time for a few years after we got married. She's an attorney and was earning $75,000 a year. In 2010, however, her illness became too much to manage while also holding down a job, and for the next 9 years, I was the sole breadwinner for our family. We've paid roughly $500 each year for her to maintain her law license, even though she's not been using it. This has been an incredible strain, particularly once we added a couple of kids. But during that time, I never pushed her to go back to work because I understood that it might just be too much for her to deal with. But 4 years ago, a mutual friend of ours asked my wife to occasionally spend a few hours per week helping out in a clerical role for minimum wage, and she agreed. This gradually turned into my wife working 15 to 20 hours a week and occasionally working as much as 35 hours a week. She would come home utterly exhausted and would sleep through most of the following weekends. After a few months of this, I pointed out to her that if she can physically manage regularly working in an office for that amount of time, perhaps she should consider doing much more lucrative legal work instead. I noted that she could work from home, no need to get dressed up or deal with a commute, and that if she billed just 5 hours per week, 1 hour per weekday, she could roughly double our household income. Even so, I only offered this as a consideration. I did not insist. Several opportunities have presented themselves over the past few years for her to resume work as a lawyer. Although she sometimes expressed minimal interest, she did not actually pursue any of them. When our friend asks, she continues to do the clerical work at minimum wage. Last December, after a year of particularly acute financial stress, I finally put my foot down. I told my wife that the family needed her to start earning more. A small wills and trust practice would be a low-pressure approach that would give her all of the scheduling flexibility she could possibly need. I reiterated that I was only asking her to do work from home for 5 hours each week, and I offered to help her get started. I also started setting deadlines by which I would ask for her to report progress towards the goal of starting a new law practice. Over the first 6 months of this year, I know she has, grudgingly, made some effort to move in this direction, but still does not seem inclined to actually start doing the legal work. I just about reached my wit's end. I love my wife, and divorce is absolutely not an option, but I'm starting to really resent her unwillingness to take the steps necessary to help carry the family's financial burden. I've used every gentle approach I can think of to tell her how important this is to me, but to little avail. A couple of weeks ago, I was literally about 10 minutes away from demanding that she find a marriage counselor for us to talk to. I was rehearsing in my head the exact way I wanted to approach it, but I ended up pulling back at the last minute because I don't think she would take that well, and I also felt like that was one of those bridges that, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. So Reddit, I'm asking for advice. Should I tell her that we need to see a marriage counselor? Should I take some other approach? Edit. To provide additional context, I'm a public interest attorney focusing on civil rights and civil liberties with a nonprofit that my wife and I founded together. Although I am able to take on amazing cases, our organization is much more nonprofit than most. We bring in an average of $45,000 to $55,000 per year, and we have 2 sets of student loans to pay off. For the past decade, we've lived in her parents' basement in a rural county, and the amount I am able to bring in by myself is just barely enough to keep us afloat, with zero money being set aside for retirement. The 20 hours of work per month, not per week, I'm asking her to do, which I would be willing to help with, would bring in an additional $15,000 to $30,000 per year. Edit. Someone could drop $1 million on our family tomorrow, and we would not choose to live anywhere else. My in-laws are amazing people, which is how they produce the amazing woman that I love. I feel that many commenters do not appreciate the fact that 2 people can love each other very much and be mostly very happy, but still have one particular, significant issue that creates tension or frustration. You don't divorce someone you love and are very happy living with over one frustration, even if that frustration becomes quite significant. You look for ways to fix the problem, which is why I wrote this post in the first place. And for people who question having kids, even though they're expensive, I suggest a little perspective. For the entirety of human history up until just a few decades ago, pretty much everyone alive was much, much poorer than my family is right now. I believe that kids, especially ours, are a blessing and a gift. No amount of material wealth or comfort could be worth not having them. My wife expects me, a pro athlete, to wake up in the middle of the night to help with the baby. My wife, Katie, 25 female, and I, 28 male, had our first baby together about 3 months ago. I'm an athlete, and Katie is a stay-at-home mom. Sleep is very important for me because of my sport. I can't be waking up multiple times throughout the night and be sleep deprived. Katie and I talked about this before trying for a kid, and I told her that I can't compromise my sleep for anything short of an emergency. I specifically mentioned that I wouldn't be waking up during the night to help with the baby, but we could hire a night nurse to help out. Things had been going smoothly until a few days ago, when Katie was being cold and distant. I asked if something was wrong, and she said everything was fine. She was quiet for a while, then finally mentioned that it's extremely unfair that I'm not helping her at all with the baby during the night. I acknowledged that she has been working hard and not getting much sleep, but we also previously agreed to this arrangement. Katie has refused to hire a night nurse to help because she doesn't trust someone new to watch our baby alone during the night. I suggested that she could have a family member help, but she didn't want to burden them. So we've been at an impasse. She still doesn't want to hire help, and I'm still not waking up during the night. Additional info. We have a maid that cleans and does the laundry multiple times per week, and we also have a meal delivery service that makes the majority of our food, so I'm not just dumping tons of housework on her. Katie doesn't have a problem with the maid being around the baby because she's known her for a while now. We've also been going to regular doctor and therapist appointments. They don't think she's suffering from postpartum. Hiring a night nurse would not be a financial burden, so the cost isn't the issue. I spend as much time as I can caring for and bonding with our baby, just not during the night when I'm sleeping. Edit for clarity. I'm a professional athlete, and my sport is our primary source of income. Update. Some of you mentioned the idea of doing a test run period with a night nurse helping out during the day while other people are awake and around, which I think is a good idea. I talked to Katie about hiring a night nurse to temporarily help out during the day, and she agreed and seemed happy about the idea. That way she can get familiar with the new nurse and feel more comfortable about transitioning to a full night type of arrangement. She also apologized for lashing out at me and explained that she was mostly too embarrassed to ask her family for more help when she already has hired help as a stay-at-home mom. So we agreed to ask my sister since they have a really good relationship. My sister has offered to come by 1 or 2 nights per week to watch our son until Katie's comfortable having the night nurse be full-time and alone. That way, Katie immediately gets at least some uninterrupted sleep too for now. As some of you figured out, I play baseball. Season officially starts in late March with spring training late February, so I won't be home much because of travel schedule. So that at least gives us a couple of months to get comfortable with a night nurse and a nanny so she isn't too overwhelmed. Not the jerk. I thought this would be the normal story of the wife doing all of the baby stuff, cooking, cleaning, etc. But you have a maid and food service, so she mostly just does the baby stuff. And seeing as how this is the only thing you've told her and made clear before even having a baby, plus giving her multiple solutions, you're definitely not the jerk. Not the jerk. You clearly set boundaries and offered alternatives, but maybe you can give a little. Is there a night of the week that you can let the wife sleep? Maybe have whoever the night nanny would be over for some day nanny stuff to build trust. You shouldn't compromise your profession, especially athletic ones that have health and injury risks that would also compromise your future earnings. But maybe this is a sign your wife just needs more help than she thought, and you gotta adapt somehow. No jerks here. I absolutely sympathize with your wife. I do. It's so hard in the beginning. Give her some grace. Sleep deprivation is no joke and can totally change a person. Is there maybe even one night a week you can help? An off season where you can help a bit? I hope if things don't improve with the baby's sleep, she will hire a night nurse so she isn't so resentful, as unfortunately, it sounds like that's where things are going. Best of luck to you all. Am I the jerk for yelling at my boyfriend's dad to let me out of the Tesla if he was going to let it drive itself? I spent last night with my boyfriend's family. We had gone out to dinner and his dad was going to drive. So my boyfriend, me, his parents, and his brother all squeezed into his dad's car and we went to the restaurant. I had a few drinks and his dad had too since he was going to drive. But on the way back, his dad started asking me, "You work on self-driving cars, yeah?" I do. I'm a systems engineer. He started asking me how I liked his Tesla, and I joked, "Just fine, as long as you're the one driving it." And he asked me what I thought about full self-driving, which he had just bought. He asked me if he should turn it on. I said, "Not with me in the car." And he then laughed and asked how I was still so scared when I work with this stuff every day. I was like, it's because but stopped when he pulled over and literally started turning it on. I was like, "I'm not kidding. Let me out of the car if you're going to do this." And my boyfriend's dad and brother started laughing at me, and my boyfriend still wasn't saying anything. His dad was like, "It'll be fine." And I reached over my boyfriend's brother and I tried to open the door, which was locked. I was getting mad, and probably more so because I was tipsy, and I yelled at him, "Let me out!" My boyfriend started trying to tell me to calm down because I was drunk, and I told him that it didn't matter. I'd be out of here if I was sober or drunk. He told me to stop talking like this in front of his little brother, and I told him to tell his dad to cut his crap out, and I wouldn't be acting this way. His dad was like, "Fine, I didn't realize it'd be such a big deal," and drove home normally, but things have been tense since. We got back to his house, and he was mad at me for overreacting the first time I met his family all together. I got angry and was like, "I'm not the one who decided to do the one thing that I said I'm not comfortable with in the car," just after I asked him not to laugh at me. He said that his dad used the car a lot and it was fine. And I asked him, since we're both rock climbers, would he ever get on a route with his equipment that doesn't work? What if someone says they do it all the time and it's fine? He was like, "Absolutely not, but that's different." And I was like, "It's literally not. Just like we don't know any climbers who would do that, nobody in my field that I know would stay in that car." He got mad and told me to go to sleep. I was drunk. But honestly, today I woke up sober and I stand by what I did. Like, I wasn't comfortable with what was happening, and my boyfriend's family all laughed and started trying to do the one thing I said no to. Like, whatever that thing is, it's messed up. Am I the jerk for yelling at my boyfriend's dad to let me out of the car? Not the jerk. When someone tells me to let them out of my car, I don't hesitate. If it makes you that uncomfortable, then he should have just waited until you weren't in the car. Honestly, I don't have anything to do with anybody who thinks it's funny to scare me. Making people uncomfortable doesn't take a lot of skill. Not the jerk. Not the jerk at all. Honestly, it doesn't matter the situation. Someone asked you about a thing you have verifiable professional experience with. You expressed immediate discomfort and let them know it was something you didn't like and were not comfortable with. He completely disregarded your clear statement of being uncomfortable and then immediately engaged in the activity that you said you were uncomfortable with. I absolutely can't stand people that do the, "See, it's not that bad, you're fine." It's like they have to convince you that it's okay so that they can feel okay about it. I would be livid. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend's dad? Please let us know. Call me old-fashioned, but I would never want to be in one of those self-driving cars either. I don't care how safe people say they are. Don't want my help? Okay, sure. You just go ahead and get yourself fired. A bit of background. A while back, I was still in high school. I worked at the local cinema to earn a bit of pocket money and experience. I stayed for a couple of years, working weekends when school was in session. I think it was halfway into my second year when the target of this revenge came into the picture. We'll call him Luke. Luke was a new hire and he was just learning the ropes. This was common as turnover was high since we were all students. He seemed alright at first, and everyone was nice to him since we were all pretty close and knew one another from high school, and we welcomed him in. I don't think even a week had passed before the problem started. The first issue I heard of was that Luke was trying to flirt with one of the girls. Thing was, this girl was already in a relationship with one of the other employees, and everyone knew this, including Luke. That didn't stop him though, and eventually the girl told him to his face to cut it out. It only got worse from there. Now, I do my best to see the good in people and give them the benefit of the doubt. Despite what the others were saying, I still try to get along with him. This unfortunately changed during the first real conversation I had with him. We were on break at the same time, and about 5 of us crowded into the little break room for lunch. I forget what exactly we were talking about, but I remember it was an uncomfortable topic, and Luke was using a lot of language. The break room was not soundproof, and there were patrons outside, especially kids. I tried to warn him about talking like that so loudly, and that he might get in trouble if a customer heard him. Immediately, his attitude towards me changed, and he responded with something along the lines of, "I can say what I want. I have the right to free speech. Don't tell me what to do." What? Sheesh. Okay, chill. I was just concerned, but you do you. A few minutes later, the conversation had switched to high school, and Luke was raving about how Caucasians were the majority in all the high schools in our district. Now, for my high school, this isn't true, as most of the community and students attending were Latino and made up about 70% of our student body. I told him as much. Me: "That's not the case for our high school." Luke: Yeah it is. We're the majority everywhere. I have a friend that goes there." Me: "I actually go there. It's mostly—" Luke: "Why are you talking?" Me: "Excuse me?" Luke: "Who invited you into this conversation? I wasn't talking to you. Who asked?" Now, this irritated me. I know it's a joke about looking for who asked, but this was before that became a thing, and I found it extremely rude. But in a moment of clarity, the best comeback came to mind, like arguing in the shower by yourself, and to this day, I could only wish to be able to recreate the moment. Smiling, I threw his words right back at him in his face. Free speech. The others at the table were laughing as I threw away the rest of my lunch and left the break room. My heart was beating too fast from the weird adrenaline rush I got, and I spent the rest of my break in the back of concessions until it was time to clock back in. I think the conversation was what sparked Luke's hatred of me. Ever since then, he would glare at me whenever I walked by, would dump the trash from his bin when we were sweeping the floors for me to pick up, and generally was a jerk. His behavior kept getting worse. He would threaten to fight people. He was a short potato of a boy, so no one was really scared. Argue, say rude, passive-aggressive, or downright hateful things, and was just generally a jerk. At some point, during a shift I wasn't there, he cornered the girl he had been eyeing and kept verbally harassing her to the point that she hid in the manager's office where he couldn't get to her. She was a sweet and loyal girl and a friend, and she and her boyfriend could be described with the phrase puppy love and had been together for a long time. The boyfriend was angry when she texted the group chat about what had happened and wanted to get Luke fired. However, people were hesitant about this, saying that the managers wouldn't want to because he had claimed discrimination and that he hadn't done anything blatantly wrong. Then another one of the employees made a suggestion. Luke was incompetent. We all knew this. Why not make the manager see it too? Revenge time. It wasn't hard to do since Luke would tend to do himself in the foot. When possible, we'd point out to managers when reviewing the cameras in the halls about him dumping his trash can when sweeping onto the ground in front of patrons. When he was using his language during the break, a text would be sent and someone would lead a manager to him to be caught. He rarely cleaned up, was rude and loud, and the incident with the girl didn't help his case. It still wasn't enough, and week after week, his name was on the schedule. Then my opportunity came. See, at the cinema, there's a position called point, aka the ticket taker that lets you into the theater area. It's the second most dreaded position, the first being self-serve cleanup, as you have to stand in place and interact with customers at a rapid-fire pace, smiling and listening for theaters to be called at the same time. When the night ends, the last person on point has to close and clean the self-serve stations. Today, to my initial dread, Luke and I were both on point. The entire time, Luke would leave his station and pace the lobby. Toward me, then back, not even sweeping the ground as he went. He wasn't supposed to leave point and had to walk around customers to get back to his podium to help them. He was told off by a manager once or twice for this, but he continued his antics anyway. Then, as things slowed down, one of the managers approached me and told me we were going down to 1 point, one person at the center rather than at both entrances, and that I'd have to explain to Luke how to close point before I went back to help clean concessions. It had to be this way since I had already taken a sanitation test and Luke had yet to do so and therefore wasn't allowed behind concessions. When I finished closing my point, I walked over to Luke and told him to move his podium to the center so he could take closing point. He did, though scowling at me. When he was set, I began to explain. Me. So you'll be closing point tonight after the last movie starts. You'll need to go to the… Luke. Go away. Me. What? Luke. I don't need your help, so don't talk to me. But I need to teach you how to close point. I don't care. Shut up. I know you don't like me, but this is work. You need to… No, I don't want your help. Just shut up. But… Buzz off. Don't talk to me. At this point, I was beyond upset. I was furious. I was trying to help, even after how he had acted, how he treated everyone here. I didn't care what he said in the break room, but it shouldn't affect work. This was ridiculous. I must have snapped or something because I complied, walking away, saying, Fine, I don't care. Don't ever talk to me again. Luke. Hey, I said… Me, waving a hand over my shoulder. Don't talk to me ever again. I went behind concessions to help where he couldn't reach me. I don't know when, but I started crying out of frustration and one of my friends came and hugged me, bringing me to a corner to cool down. I don't get angry often, and when I do, it makes me scared. I was just sick of his antics, sick of the way he spoke to me, just sick of his attitude. I'm not sure how long I sat back there, but soon enough, that same friend came and waved me to the front of concessions. I wiped my face and walked out, and he pointed to point. There was Luke, being instructed by the manager on how to close point, and the manager did not look happy with him. Arms folded, frowning, flat tone, everything spoke of irritation. My friend said they had already explained that Luke refused my help when the manager asked them what was going on, as point can be seen and heard from almost the entire lobby. Seeing the scene lifted my spirits a bit, and I was able to end the night relatively easy. The next weekend, when the schedule came out, I didn't even have to check my email. It was posted in the group text, specifically the section with Luke's name. It was blacked out. If he had quit, his name would have been removed, but the fact it was blacked out meant it was a sudden event. Luke had been fired. I'm not sure what it was that they fired him for anymore, but considering we were always low on staff and they had to worry about discrimination, I'm guessing there were enough complaints that they had to fire him. I'd like to think that last interaction I had with him was the final nail in the coffin, but I was just glad to see him go more than anything. I heard he worked at a common fast food place for a while, but ended up getting McFired from there too. Good luck in life, Luke. You weren't missed. Am I the jerk for talking to my wife's boss about her being overworked? My wife has been putting in 10 to 14-hour days chained to her computer for the past 2 to 3 weeks, through weekends as well. Edit. To clarify, the last 2 to 3 weeks have been 100+ hour weeks. The whole year has been bad, with lots of lost weekends and working over vacations. Wasn't able to take any days off for the holidays either. She's been screaming about her job, how she wants to quit, how it's ridiculous she's working so hard without any break. There have been multiple tear-filled days. I've been walking on eggshells, doing everything I can to help around the house and get her anything she wants, but I'm on edge constantly, watching out for an explosion. Today, working through the weekend again, she was screaming about other people she worked with messing her up, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I texted her boss. Edit. We work at the same company, and I'm semi-friendly with him already. And I said, 1. There are limits for human beings. And 2. This kind of thing can't happen again next year. He agreed and said he'd try to help. Either way, he did a crap job of keeping me out of his conversation with her about limits today. So she found out I'd messaged him ASAP. Edit. Yup, that's me complaining about getting caught red-handed. Now she's telling me that it was extremely wrong of me to message her boss to say that she can't handle her job, which I didn't say, and it's going to set her career back years. Says she can't ever trust me anymore to talk about work or how she's feeling. Generally threw me in the doghouse. Am I the jerk here? I honestly don't know. I can't stand to see her that strung out by work, but did I cross the line too far? Edit. There's more details in the comments. but I realized almost as soon as I posted how much of a jerk I am. Reddit is good for perspective, even if it's sometimes harsh. Let's be honest, I needed the harsh this time. I talked to my wife this morning, apologized, and she asked me to apologize to her boss and never speak to him again. Her boss was cool about the moment of weakness, said he understood, and that he would not let it affect how he treated my wife at work. All is certainly not forgiven, but we'll work through it one step at a time. You're the jerk. I don't know what field your wife works in, but women often have to fight a lot harder for promotions and raises than men do. You get to hear her stress, but I'm sure she plays it off as being totally cool and collected to her coworkers. What you did is essentially tell her boss that she cannot handle the workload, and it's not your place to do that, even a little bit. If her anger and stress at home is an issue for you, that's something you both need to communicate about with each other. You should never be messing with her other relationships without her permission, especially not her work relationships. You've shown her that she cannot express her emotions to you and expect them to remain private. So how is she supposed to be vulnerable with you in the future? Let's be honest, he might have single-handedly tanked her career at the office, and depending on her industry and how small and specialized it is, he may have completely ended her career. You're the jerk. The 1950s called and they need you back. How could you possibly think this is okay? Not only are you a jerk, you violated your wife's trust and a sacred confidence. Things aren't looking good for you here. You could cost her job at the worst and any future promotions or raises for the future. Wow. You're the jerk. Getting in touch with her boss like that sends so many implicit messages that your wife is unable to express or stand up for herself, that it's likely to be extremely embarrassing at the very least and career damaging at the worst. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for kicking out one of my bridesmaids for showing up in the wrong dress? My 23 female wedding was back on Saturday, December 31st, and I'm still getting backlash from this, so I want to know if I was the jerk. In the country I live in, it's currently winter, and we get a fair amount of snow, so my wedding was a winter-themed wedding. The color theme was forest green and gold. My dress was obviously white, and I chose the color of my bridesmaids' dresses to be forest green as well. My maid of honor's dress was black, and everyone was to wear gold accessories. I have this friend, we'll call her Kat, that I asked to be one of my bridesmaids. When we went dress shopping and I told them the color theme I was going for, Kat immediately expressed that she thought forest green was a bad choice. She said she thinks it's not a flattering color and that I should choose something different and more girly. I said no, because my wedding was winter themed and I thought the color would go perfect with the theme. She suggested a pink, blue, even a red. I said no, but thanks for your opinion. She found out my maid of honor's dress was black and asked if she could wear black too. I said no, only my maid of honor is wearing black. I paid for all of the dresses. Fast forward to wedding day, everyone's getting their hair and makeup done, and Kat shows up 30 minutes late holding a bag that looked like it had a dress inside. I asked her what this was for. She told me it was for later at the reception if she got uncomfortable and wanted to change after pictures. I was like, okay, cool. So fast forward, we're all dressed and walking down the stairs because the ceremony is beginning in 30 minutes and we were going to take some pictures before. Kat is the last person to come down and she's wearing a black dress. At the time, I was preoccupied taking pictures with my parents, but my maid of honor came over to me and made me aware of the situation. I confronted Kat and asked her what was going on. She said she hates her bridesmaid dress as the color is ugly and makes her look gross, so she's wearing black. I told her to please go back and change. She refused and started walking away from me. I said I'm going to ask her one more time, and if she doesn't oblige, I'm calling security and kicking her out. She began yelling at me to buzz off. I called security and asked them to please escort her out. She started making a big scene, yelling how I'm such a jerk, that I can't force her to wear the other dress, and that I'm a horrible, inconsiderate friend. The wedding went on, and it was truly amazing. Ever since the wedding, Kat has been blowing up my phone with texts, saying some really nasty things and asking for the money back she spent on the black dress, since it was a waste and she didn't even get to wear it. I had to block her number. Some of my other bridesmaids have been giving me crap, saying that it was a little harsh kicking her out and embarrassing her like that, and that maybe I should give her the money back. Am I the jerk for kicking her out? Not the jerk. She embarrassed herself. She agreed to wear the dress you picked out and then deceitfully planned to change at the last moment in the hope that you'd just let her get away with it. She knew that you would tell her no. Think of being in a wedding as like playing a part in a play or a ballet or something. You get cast as bridesmaid, so you wear the costume that the artistic director has picked out for bridesmaids to wear. If you don't want to wear the costume, don't be in the show. But you can't just show up on opening night and say, "I didn't like your costume choice, so I'm going to wear the same costume as this other character instead." You will address me by my new name. I once worked for the second most toxic man I've ever known. This was a small business of him, the owner, myself, and my long-suffering colleague. So he was in complete control with no one to report to. My boss was an absolute man-child who would launch into hours-long freakouts over the smallest inconvenience, and then as soon as his problem was solved, would act frustrated and sulky that we weren't all celebrating his victory. He would have these tantrums several times a week. Our shop was on a high street. I felt bad for our business neighbors having to put up with it. It's only now, years later, I remember we had student flats above us as well. When my boss wasn't freaking out, he would also frequently get hyper and giddy and make fun of us, lost in a fit of giggles while calling us names. Or he would decide that some new form of honor should be bestowed on him, like we should be made to call him Sir or Master or Darth. Seriously, imagine a man that has never in his life held a stick or pole without swinging it around making lightsaber noises. One day, he decided that we were to call him Daddy Cool. We argue and resist, and oh for goodness sake at him, but he is insistent that we are to refer to him henceforth as Daddy Cool. I step away from the insanity to take my lunch in the basement. I chill a little, and my own anger settles to weary resignation. Dangerous, perilous, weary resignation. I climb the steps from the basement, I burst through the door, and bellow in my stage voice, "Daddy Cool!" Customers are in the shop being tended to by my boss. I ignore them. My colleague crumbles into hysterics, gasping OMG between breaths. "We've run out of XYZ, Daddy Cool. We should order some more of UVW also, Daddy Cool." I address him as Daddy Cool for days until he's like, "Okay, all right, that's enough." Actually, no. I continue to refer to him as Daddy Cool well beyond him begging me to stop, and several more times as necessary over the years when a reminder is necessary. Am I the jerk for asking our friend for my son's toy back? My son, who's 4, slept over at a friend's house last night. This friend's parents were doing my wife and I a huge favor because my wife's father had surgery yesterday and we needed to be there and didn't get home until after midnight. So yes, this story begins with us already in debt to them. Anyway, at nap time today, my son started freaking out because he couldn't find Sleepy Dumbo, his stuffed animal, and he cannot sleep without Sleepy Dumbo. I remembered that when I picked him up, I didn't see Sleepy Dumbo, so I text the mom and dad of the friend. I get no response. My wife is a wreck, so I'm not bothering her with this, but my son is freaking out. So I tell him we'll get in the car and go get Sleepy Dumbo, and he slightly calmed down. So we drive over, and I try to call them both on the way. When we get there, I knock, and we wait a bit with no answer. At this point, my son starts freaking out more because he's afraid something happened to Sleepy Dumbo. I try to reassure him, but he starts crying. I knock again, and the wife of the couple answers. She says that she's working and asks what I want. I explain about Sleepy Dumbo. She again says that she's working, and she says she doesn't have time to look for Dumbo and tells us to come back later. My son starts freaking out more. I ask if we can look. She says she needs to focus. I promise to be fast. She lets me in. We get to his friend's room. Sleepy Dumbo is on the bed. My son gets him, and I hustle us out. I thank the mom, but she's glaring at me. On the way home, he hugs Sleepy Dumbo the whole time. I remind him to be more careful with Sleepy Dumbo in the future, and at home, nap time commences peacefully. About an hour ago, my wife and I both got this text, so I'm going to copy and paste it. I really don't appreciate the way you barged into my house earlier today while I was working. I know you both have a lot going on right now, but the world doesn't revolve around you. My husband and I agreed to do you a favor, but that doesn't mean you get to just walk all over us. In the future, if you call and we don't answer, that means it isn't a good time to come over. I felt very embarrassed and guilty after reading that. My wife, however, is furious. She called the wife of the other couple some indelicate names. I'm really grateful to them for agreeing to babysit for us, and I accept that I am to blame for forgetting Sleepy Dumbo the first time. I don't know if asking to come in and get him is quite a big deal as she's making it out to be though, and my wife is upset. I don't know how much of that is misplaced fear for her dad though. Am I a jerk, or was this just an unfortunate situation? If someone doesn't answer calls and you show up anyway and they politely explain it's not a good time, it's really rude to insist. You're the jerk. You're the jerk for just showing up. I know your son needed his toy, but sometimes you have to teach your kid that you don't always get what you want right away, and you have to learn to be patient. She clearly was in the middle of something work-wise and didn't want to be disturbed. Yeah, this seems like a perfect teaching moment for the 4-year-old. I know Dumbo is really important to you. You're sad that you left him behind. As soon as their parents say it's okay, we'll go pick it up. Remember these feelings and pay more attention next time you bring Dumbo somewhere. When I brought my 4-year-old to school this morning and was getting on his gloves for recess, he started a fit because he wanted a different pair of gloves. I told him if it was important to him to pick out his gloves every day, he absolutely should. Tomorrow, when we're about to go, I'll remind him to pack his backpack himself so he can choose the gloves. Fit over, and now my big boy gets to pack his own backpack and get that extra level of responsibility. Well, what do you think? Is Opie the jerk or not? Please let us know. Be careful when you complain to Little Caesars. When I was in high school, I had a part-time job at Little Caesars working the register, handing pizzas to customers. It was in a rougher part of town, so there were plenty of scary and weird customer interactions. However, there's one that was intensely satisfying. On a random weekday, some woman came in and ordered a pizza with a wide variety of toppings. Completely normal so far. She leaves and comes back 10 minutes later to pick up her pie and leaves. She comes back another 5 minutes later with the pizza, saying that the toppings fell off when she was trying to eat it, called us lazy, and demanded that we remake it. I guess she had never had a pizza before. So I take the pizza to the back, explain the situation to the guy making the pizzas, and tell him to put the toppings under the cheese. Little did I know this would create the most disgusting looking pizza I had ever witnessed. All of the sausage, veggies, pepperonis, and whatever else was completely covered by the cheese, but could be seen slightly because melted cheese is a little translucent. It looked like the cheese had subtly turned different parts of brown, green, orange from grease underneath, and wasn't pretty and smooth like pizza usually is. It was lumpy, like chunky throw-up. It was absolutely vile, and I was counting down the minutes for her to return. Pretty soon after the pie was finished, what I assumed to be her husband came inside to pick it up. As per standard procedure at my store, I opened the box to show him the final product. My creation, my monster. The poor man looked absolutely appalled and heartbroken. He asked me in a very disappointed voice, "What did she say to you guys?" And I simply explained to him that because the pizza's toppings fell off when she tried to eat it, we simply put them under the cheese. He just apologized and left with the pie. Not gonna lie, I kind of wish the woman had picked it up because I'm sure we would have gotten a better reaction, but it still warms my heart to know that she probably ate it. Neighbor goes full-on Karen after I kept her Amazon package that was delivered to my address. 2 weeks ago, Amazon dropped off a package on my doorstep. I left it there and I went to the store. When I came back, it was still there. I took it inside, called Amazon customer service. After being asked for and giving the associate the name, tracking number, and contents of said package, I was told that their policy was to either keep it or trash it. I kept a part of it, threw the rest away. Last night, the owner of the package knocked on my door loudly. I answered it, and she immediately accused me of stealing her stuff. I apologized and asked what was she talking about. I had completely forgotten about it at this point. She mentions that she had a camera in her car and it recorded Amazon dropping off the item. Plus, they take photos of the home number, and she was contemplating getting the police involved. I remembered the items and asked about the specific one. She confirmed it was hers, then went into a story about Amazon not replacing the items or refunding her money, and I apologized again and explained the situation, my actions, and what I was told by Amazon. And since I still had one part of her package, I gave it to her. She left after repeating her concerns and assumptions about our thievery. Today, literally 30 minutes ago, I learned that she previously took her complaints to the only neighbor that I know and am friendly with in the complex, bothering him at his job for over 10 minutes, calling my family thieves and threatening police action. So, am I the jerk for keeping and trashing someone else's property? Edit. The individual unit or apartment number was not on the package, just her name and the townhouse, condo, and complex address itself. There's no manager office, no lobby, no communal area, no communal mailbox. It's a townhouse/condo type situation. I also didn't know her before last night. I don't exactly speak to the neighbors except for mainly one. Not the jerk. There was no communal area or leasing office to put it in per OP. 2. You called Amazon. 3. She waited 2 weeks. Clearly it wasn't that important to her. Not the jerk. It's amazing how few people in this sub understand how Amazon works. You aren't responsible to do their job. You have no duty to track down the actual recipient and get them the package. It's unlikely that the person who came to your door hadn't already received a refund or a new item and was just there to get the item you were told to keep. If she knew the item was at your place, which she clearly knew, why did she wait so long to knock on your door? As a former Amazon customer service rep, I'm going to say not the jerk. This is exactly Amazon's policy. If a package is delivered to the wrong address, the person is told that they should trash it or keep it. And when the person who should have received it calls, they'll be eligible for refund or replacement, depending on the product. The neighbor is full of it. Amazon took care of her. That's 100% company policy. They're not going to refuse to make it right when it's clear it was delivered to the wrong address. Also, the Amazon rep could see who it should have gone to, but is not allowed to tell OP to protect the original customer's privacy. The neighbor came after OP to try to get double what she ordered, the original and the replacement. Also, if she has it on camera, why did she wait 2 weeks to ask about it? OP did the right thing by calling Amazon about the mistaken delivery. It is unreasonable to expect someone in OP's situation to take responsibility for Amazon's error. The neighbor received a refund or replacement. That's their policy. Neighbor is the jerk here. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their neighbor? Please let us know. I can't even tell you how many times Amazon has delivered the wrong stuff to our house. We always take it to the house that it actually belongs to, but that's because we can see their address on it. Am I the jerk for wanting to talk to my daughter's new teacher about being nicer to the kids? My daughter's preschool hired a new teacher or teacher's aide who's in their early 20s, female, earlier this year. My daughter adores this teacher, and my wife, who is also a teacher, speaks highly of her. We just had a baby, so I've been taking care of drop-off and pickup lately, and I've been able to form my own opinion of this teacher. In my opinion, she messes with the kids too much. These are all examples that I've seen. For Christmas, we got every teacher a box of chocolates from a small shop near the school. The shop wrapped the boxes, and they have the name of the shop on the wrapping paper. Everyone knows what it is by looking at it. My daughter ran in yelling, "We got you chocolate!" And the teacher said, "Abby, it was supposed to be a surprise." She still hugged my daughter and thanked her, but I felt that remark was unnecessary. Another time, I picked my daughter up towards the end of snack time. My daughter came up to the teacher and asked for more snacks. Teacher said, "Abby, you already ate all of our snacks. If I give you more, we won't have anything to eat tomorrow. You're about to go home and have dinner anyways." In my opinion, the first two sentences were very unnecessary. The last one just happened on Friday. Pickup ends at 4:30, and I'm guessing the teacher leaves at 4:45. I called the school and said that I was going to be late for pickup, and I got there at around 4:45. When I got there, my daughter was with a boy whose parents had been there for 20 minutes and he was refusing to leave. My daughter was getting her stuff, and I saw the teacher give the boy a spray bottle, a rag, and gloves and say, "Jack, if you want to stay, you're going to have to clean the tables, then vacuum. I have to go home, and your mom can't wait forever." She went to the closet, got her stuff, and started walking to the door. His mom also started to walk away. The boy dropped the cleaning supplies, started crying, and ran for his mom when the teacher made it to the door and his mom was out of sight. In my opinion, there had to have been a better way to get him to go than scaring him like that. I get that she's joking, but these kids are 3 and 4 and don't get it. My daughter has never admitted to this teacher making her upset, but I still don't like how she talks to my daughter or the other kids. My wife and I were talking about the school, and I said that I wanted to talk to the teacher about being nicer to my daughter and the other kids. My wife rolled her eyes at me and said that I'm starting to sound like a certain parent at her school that she and the other teachers can't stand, and that if I insist that everyone coddles our daughter, then she's going to have a hard time when she's older. Am I the jerk for not liking the teacher and wanting her to be nicer? You're the jerk. The teacher sounds perfectly nice, and correcting kids is part of her job. Wow. So this teacher, who's an expert on childcare, is helping guide children to be good little humans who have empathy towards others, making sure to save snacks for everyone else the next day, and be helpful. What a monster. Instead of saying no to children's requests, she's telling them the answer is no and then gently redirecting them. And you think it's mean-spirited joking? Yet somehow your wife and your daughter love this teacher. You're the jerk, man, and it's clear it's your wife that does the bulk of the childcare. You wouldn't even know anything about this teacher if your wife hadn't been occupied with the birth of your new baby. Why don't you stop and think about that for a while? You're the jerk. You're making something out of nothing. You're making a big deal out of something kids can understand. Eat food today, there's none left tomorrow. You're close to dinner time. As far as the chocolate, that is overreaction. You give gifts. They're supposed to be a surprise. Relax. You're that parent every teacher hates. They have a hard enough job as it is. Yes, you're the jerk. Get some thicker skin. Your wife likes the teacher. Your kid likes the teacher. If she were mean to your daughter would feel that. You're not doing your kid or your wife any favors here. I offered to help my wife with the dishes, and she totally flipped out on me. My wife and I, who are both 26, both work 4 days a week. I work 12-hour shifts and she works 8-hour shifts. She would work more, but our daughter, who is 1, needs to be picked up from daycare. I leave for work before they wake up, and some days I don't get home until after our daughter has gone to bed. This week, our daughter's daycare provider was sick, so my wife took the week off of work to care for her. I worked an extra day to make up for her lost income, so it all worked out fine, or so I thought. She seemed stressed still, so I asked her what was wrong. She broke down, saying that she's struggling with balancing work, caring for our daughter throughout the week, and keeping our house clean and cooking, etc. I responded calmly by saying that I can't miss work or reduce hours. We simply cannot afford it. She responded by saying she knows that, but it's overwhelming for her, and the house chores are piling up. I told her 90% of the problems with messiness could be solved if she picked up after herself, if she just put the used butter knives in the sink after she was done, and rinsed bottles, cookware, etc. I'd be happy to do the dishes when I get home from work. I'll even put them away after. But I do not want to play scavenger hunt and look around the house for things to wash. She did not respond to me after I said that, other than a quiet okay before going to console our daughter who woke up early from her nap. She still seemed upset with me, so I vented to my coworker about what happened. He says I was being a jerk because I didn't even listen to what she wanted. I feel like I was perfectly reasonable. Am I the jerk? You're not the jerk for offering to help with the dishes. You're the jerk for telling her that 90% of the problems with messiness could be solved if she picked up after herself. Like, what were you thinking? Your title was misleading. Either you did that on purpose in a weak attempt to garner sympathy, or you are actually that dense. I suspect it's the former. Did you see where he answered about the chores he does at home? He takes out the garbage and does the dishes a couple times a week. He basically offered to continue doing what he already does, which is next to nothing. I'm sorry, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I wouldn't call dishes and trash household chores. That's less than the bare minimum to survive as a human being. You're the jerk, OP. If you don't want to go on a scavenger hunt because it's a lot of work walking things back to the sink, rinsing things out, etc., do you think it's possible that it's also a lot of work for her? Especially if she's exhausted and being pulled away from these tasks by the needs of your kid. Doing all those little tasks as they come up during the day might be less overwhelming for some people than doing them all at once, but it still adds up in terms of time and energy when you're also trying to juggle other things. Plus, it sounds like she was venting and/or leading up to a suggestion about how to fix things, and you thought it was a good idea to insult her and tell her to do more work when she's already telling you she's overwhelmed. You're the jerk. You took from that whole thing the dishes? Clearly, it's about a lot more than butter knives in the wrong place. How 90% of her problems are her own fault is stupid. I bet 99% that she carries the entire mental load of the household and has baby brain. On days that you work, I imagine she's the one that's basically the sole parent, and probably on days that you don't work, she does the lion's share. Exactly. She has 3 jobs: childcare, household, and her actual job. OP says he works more hours, but that's BS. Calculate the work she does in a way where they'd have to pay for a babysitter and a cleaner to do those jobs. She contributes way more, and OP needs to get his head out of his rear. Not the jerk. Crazy idea here, I know, but what if he's right? Look, Leaving dirty dishes laying around the house is flat out disgusting, no matter how many of you claim that it's normal. If his wife is incapable of at least taking her dirty dishes to the sink, let alone giving them a quick scrub the way my husband and I do, then I honestly feel sorry for this man. Validate her feelings for leaving dirty dishes laying around and being filthy? Give me a break. I'm a woman myself, but I'm so sick of you people bashing the husbands in these stories simply because they're men. Just reverse the roles, and none of you would be calling his wife the jerk if she told her husband to stop leaving dirty dishes around the house. You'd all be telling her that she isn't a maid and she's 100% right, and that her husband needs to stop being a slob. You're not his mommy, he needs to wash his own dishes. What a man-child. I saw one story where most of you actually sided with the husband instead of the wife. How on earth was this possible? Well, let's see. The husband was a Major League Baseball player who hired a maid, a personal chef, a nanny, and wanted to hire a night nurse to watch the baby at night so his wife, a stay-at-home mom, wouldn't have to deal with it. All this, and his wife still couldn't stop complaining about how hard it was being a parent, and that he needed to do more to help her with the baby. At least now we know what it takes for you people to side with the dad. Unfortunately, most men won't get to be professional athletes making millions a year and hiring maids, nannies, chefs, and night nurses so their stay-at-home mom wives can be lazy. So Reddit will never cut those guys an ounce of slack. Saddest thing is, it's only a matter of time until she leaves him and takes him to the cleaners for everything he's worth due to his talent and dedication, something she never had to work for and instead just reaps the benefits of. So glad I found a husband who, like myself, has common sense, and our 3 kids are being raised to be decent people who have the ability to use their brains, unlike most of you. Edit. Oh, look, I'm being downvoted by everyone. Big surprise there. If I wanted upvotes, I would have left a comment about OP being a monster who doesn't deserve his wife and how she deserves so much better. I would have shared a sob story about how I know what it's like to live with a monster who refuses to validate your feelings and who asks you not to be a lazy slob. That's how you get upvotes on Reddit. You just make yourself out to be a perpetual victim, then all these other losers will relate to you and upvote your crap. I don't want upvotes on Reddit. I don't want you people to relate to me. The more you all disagree with someone, the more common sense they have. Ouch. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. If you left dirty dishes around the house, Reddit boy, To be honest, I don't think I'd be with you. That's really gross. Check with your boss about your availability? Sure. I'm the HR manager of a medium-sized company based out of the United States. We're in an industry that relies heavily on most people having an assistant to manage their schedule, handle their phones, etc. I had someone tell me on a Wednesday that their assistant was leaving. Let's call the assistant Andy. I talked to Andy, who said his last day would be the next Friday. It's less than 2 weeks' notice, which is annoying but not illegal, and I understand that things happen, so I'm not gonna put up a stink about it. Andy was a nightmare for the next week and a half. When trying to schedule interviews for replacements, he kept insisting on prioritizing certain candidates because he wanted to do it his way. He wouldn't follow our recruiting protocol and complained to his boss that we were pushing back when we most certainly weren't. But the worst part was scheduling the transition meeting/exit interview. At my company, our policy is to conduct a transition meeting and exit interview together. I do these meetings, and they're usually pretty harmless. I'll give the employee their final paycheck, as required by law, tell them about how to sign up for benefits after they leave if they want, COBRA, share info on porting over their retirement, etc. After going over all of the transition information, I'll conduct a brief exit interview, asking them about how we can improve the working experience, etc. I always tell them that this exit interview is for their benefit as a final means of giving feedback to us, but I also make it clear that they don't have to share anything they don't want to. All in all, these meetings usually take between 15 to 20 minutes. At first, I had a time on hold with Andy to do an exit interview on his last day. He then emailed me and said he wouldn't be able to do an exit interview because his priority was wrapping things up for his boss. Let's call him Ben. I let him know that I needed to be able to give him his final paycheck and additional information. He told me to just leave the paycheck on his desk. By this point, I'm fed up with him because his emails are incredibly rude, so I CC my boss, the head of HR. Let's call her Carol. I tell Andy that there's more than just the final paycheck that I need to share, and that I'd be more than happy to share more about our company policies in our meeting. I also said he's welcome to reach out to anyone on the HR team to ask. Andy ignores my email. I follow up the next morning. I run into him in the elevator and he literally refuses to acknowledge me, not even to say good morning or smile awkwardly. He ignores this email too. By the afternoon, I'm over it. I tell Carol, who calls Andy. Carol says, "Hey, I heard from the Invisibun that she's having a hard time getting a hold of you to schedule an exit interview." He responds that he's just so busy wrapping things up for his boss and he really appreciates us following up, but no, he won't be available. And if there are any issues, we can reach out to his boss. Cue the malicious compliance. Carol lets him know that this isn't optional and that it'll only be 15 minutes. But if he's so busy, we can certainly reach out to Ben to make sure there's time carved out. He stutters and isn't able to make a coherent sentence. Ben says we don't have to do that. Carol says, "It's okay. We understand the need to make sure Ben is on board, so we'll call Ben on his cell," and she hangs up. We then call Ben and she tells him, "I'm so sorry to do this, but Andy let us know he won't be available for an exit interview. Could you make sure he has time for it? We're trying to schedule something and are having a hard time." He asks how long, and she says 15 minutes. He says, "That's ridiculous. He should have 15 minutes. I'll call him and take care of it right now." Carol thanks him, and we continue to have our meeting. A few minutes later, Andy comes by and is fuming. He demands that we do the exit interview at that moment. I calmly tell him that there are important documents I need to prepare, which is why we're trying to schedule time. Carol then calmly tells him that there are policies and procedures to follow when you leave a company. The assistant says he doesn't appreciate us going to Ben and that he felt really disrespected. Carol gently reminds him that he said it was okay to check in with Ben and we're glad it's a priority now. And how does 10 a.m. sound tomorrow? Andy stormed down the hallway and we had our exit interview the next day at 10 a.m. Best part? It would have been a brief 15 minutes, but then Andy got argumentative and we went overtime. Am I the jerk for refusing to drop my ex-husband's last name? My ex-husband, who I'll call by a fake name, Tony, and I broke up 2 years ago after 26 years of marriage. We have 4 kids together. Due to the stupidity of the time and social pressure, I added my husband's last name to my name. So all my documents, like identification, driver's license, passport, all credit cards, voter registration card, have his last name at the end. We ended amicably, and even more so due to the circumstances, and we divorced. Honestly, it would suck to have to change everything, go to government agencies, pay for everything new, go to the bank and change everything, so I didn't want to take out his last name. But I introduced myself by my maiden name. Only in the documents is it this name. Tony is currently engaged to a guy, and they're going to get married in the next year. The situation that happened was, our son and his family decided to travel and invited me. He asked for my ID to make the reservations. A few days later, me, Tony, and fiance were at my grandson's party. Our son said jokingly in the conversation circle that he couldn't believe that until today I hadn't changed my last name. I laughed, saying that I was too lazy to rush to change everything that has this name on it. Tony started to ask if I really hadn't changed my name, if I didn't think that being engaged to someone else isn't the best time to change it, and he insisted that it was weird of me. I just replied, "Unless you can go in my place, spend hours and hours in lines, pay hundreds for it, I won't do it in the near future." We stopped talking and the party flowed smoothly. Later, he called me and said I was acting weird and being a jerk by refusing to change the name, which he said was uncomfortable. I asked our son, and he said he understands my side of not wanting to do this, but he understands Tony's side of being uncomfortable with his ex using his last name after the divorce. So I asked for an outside opinion. Am I the jerk? I don't intend to never change. I just don't want to go through it right now. Not the jerk. If having his ex share a last name with him bothers him that much, then maybe he should take his fiance's name after they marry. Not the jerk. After 26 years, that's your name. This. My mom and dad were married 24 years. She didn't want to change her name back, and now they've been divorced 29 years. My dad never made a big deal out of it. She can choose what name to use. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. It's normal for someone to not change their last name after a divorce. I know women who have gotten remarried and didn't change their name even then because they wanted the same name as their kids. Not the jerk. I'm kind of puzzled by Tony being uncomfortable with his ex using his last name. You had the name for 26 years. Did Tony not consider it your name during that time? Was he just loaning it to you on sufferance? There are plenty of perfectly good reasons to keep his last name. Your kids have that last name. All your documents are in that name. Maybe you've used that name in your career. And yes, it is expensive and time-consuming to change it. Daughter dyed her hair badly and refuses to go to school. Can't believe this is happening, but here we go. Daughter, who's 14, has always been naturally blonde. However, the last few months, brown hair has been coming through her roots. She asked us if she can dye it earlier this month. We said yes, but only if it's done professionally. An appointment is booked for the 8th of February. Very popular salon with a good reputation, meaning long wait times. But if it's being done right. Reason for this is both her sister, and my wife have very sensitive scalps. Last time older daughter used an at-home kit, it went badly wrong. Doctor's kind of wrong. Youngest daughter was happy with this and agreed to wait, but this weekend went out with her friend and bought an at-home kit, dyeing her hair at her friend's house without any adult assistance. Well, now it's orange. We offered to buy a brown or black kit to cover it until her appointment, but she screamed she is a blonde, not brunette, and hasn't really left her room since. She's refusing to go to school until we fix it. I said I don't have a magic hair fixing spell, and the choice is go dark for 3 weeks or put up with the orange color. We phoned the salon, but they cannot move up the appointment, but will contact in case of a cancellation. So Reddit, am I the jerk for sending my daughter to school with self-inflicted orange hair? To be clear, as it's been mentioned a few times, the brown or brunette option was a temporary color, not a permanent. It would wash out in a few weeks anyway. We've tried at other salons as well, however they have similar wait times. One can fit us in earlier, the 25th of January, but honestly, their Google reviews are a very mixed bag, 2 stars out of 5, so we're not overly confident with that one. Edit. Thanks for all the advice. We won't be dyeing it again, and we'll try the purple/blue shampoo instead, hoping to tone it down. Also, wife just got off the phone with a salon who can get her in this Friday, so she'll have to suck it up for the rest of the week. It's going to cost us nearly twice as much as the normal salon, so guess who will be doing extra chores for a while? Not the jerk. And your daughter just learned an important lesson about instant gratification. It's not always gratifying. So she had everything set up for her to get it done, yet she was impatient, gave in, and dyed it on her own? Not the jerk. Your daughter messed up. If your kids can't behave, they don't belong in a movie theater. Some parents really insist that kids will be kids and can't be disciplined at all, and it's not true. They're just lazy parents, or selfish. In the off chance you do have a kid with behavioral issues beyond your control, then you have to make some personal sacrifices. It's not everyone else's problem. If you know your kid can't sit quietly through a movie, then why take them to a movie theater? I went to see a kids movie recently and fully expected some level of craziness. It wasn't like for little kids or anything, but it was an animated film. I know that kids will make some kind of noise. However, I was set by a family that was acting like they were in their own living room the entire film. Kids running all over the place, standing on chairs, invading people's spaces, talking, yelling, singing, screaming, etc. And the parents did nothing. No shushing, no reprimanding. Just ignored them and watched the movie. So happy for them that they deal with that BS enough at home to be desensitized. But I'm happily child-free and didn't pay $12 for a ticket and $16 for snacks to have a horrible experience and a migraine by the end of it. The kids were old enough to know better if they had been taught better, but I'm assuming they weren't. The theater was full of kids who were behaving themselves and weren't ruining the experience for everyone else. When there are kids in a theater acting that way, it doesn't just mess it up for the adults, it also distracts for all of the kids who are actually behaving. I don't buy this excuse that kids will just be kids and that there's nothing parents can do about it. At the very least, you can choose to keep your kids at home if they don't know how to act in public. I feel like some parents behave this way because they believe that no one is going to say anything. What was I supposed to do? Interrupt the movie and bother people around us by confronting them in the moment? Or missed parts of the movie myself by going and getting a manager and pulling a Karen? They do this crap counting on the fact that most people will say nothing, or think that everyone else around them has the same ideology that kids will be kids, and that because they're kids, no one should be bothered. Flat out entitlement. Not my fault you messed up by having them. Edit. Okay, I'm not checking the updates on this anymore. Some of y'all are taking it a bit too far, acting like you have some personal stake in the matter. I chose the least confrontational route possible and just wanted to complain online and then move on. I have no clue why any of you care whether or not I complained to the staff and got it fixed in the moment. I did not want to be in a confrontational situation at the time, and I don't have to explain myself, but feel free to read my comments on this thread for clarification. Thanks. Should have gotten theater personnel involved and gotten them kicked out. OP. Like I said in the post, I would have had to miss parts of the movie myself, but I didn't mention that the theater staff was almost entirely teenagers, and I kind of just didn't want to put them in a confrontational situation, honestly. If I saw a single adult in there, maybe I would have considered it more. Last time I had to get two little jerks kicked from a movie theater, the manager offered me 2 free vouchers to use to see the movie again. But guess what? You have the great little thing in your pocket called a phone. Call the theater, ask for the manager. Tell him what theater you're in and that some jerks are letting their kids run wild and ruin the movie for everyone else. Then sit back and watch both shows. Am I the jerk for preventing my ex from moving to his home and forcing him to live in a 1-bedroom apartment? I, 40 female, was married to Chris, 42 male, for 15 years. We have 3 kids, Alex, 15 male, Lexi, who's 12 female, and Spencer, who's 9. I filed for divorce 2 years ago because Chris is obsessed with moving to a warmer climate. During lockdown, he began working from home, and by the end of the year, his company decided to give up office space, and now he had the opportunity to live elsewhere. Years ago, we agreed that we would move when we retired. He became obsessed with this idea, and I refused to entertain it until our kids were done with school or I could get my pension. We tried therapy, but he would not compromise, like buying a vacation home. It was full-time in the warmer location or nothing. It got bad enough that it was the only thing he ever focused on. It absolutely destroyed our marriage, and the resentment is strong. He was confident he would get custody of our kids because he makes a significant amount more than me, and his family is pretty wealthy. He was also sure that Alex would want to move with him because he loves the place my ex wants to move to and plans to attend college in that state. He knows I would never be far away from any of my kids and hoped to divide and conquer, and that he would force me to go too. My ex was pretty much laughed out of court by the judge and told he cannot uproot his kids because he wants to live in warmer weather. He wanted custody, but the court looks at the best interest of the kids, and we were ultimately awarded joint legal custody. Now he has to work it out with me since he needs my approval to take the kids, which will never happen. He's tried to pressure Alex, but to our surprise, Alex is not interested in his father's bribes. He went as far as buying a house there and met a local woman about 6 months after we filed. She's pressuring him to move full-time. He can only afford a 1-bedroom apartment in our hometown right now. Our kids don't want to go with him because they have to sleep on an air mattress and pull-out bed, and it's uncomfortable. The best scenario is for our kids to have 2 homes that are comfortable and close by, and I am very aware of this, but still believe it should be in our home state. He wanted to meet for dinner the other night, and I agreed. He presented me with a whole new plan to move, including a brand new home for me, and offered me more alimony than I was awarded, basically the rent he currently pays for the apartment. Additionally, he offered an in-law suite/apartment for my mom to stay in or move in with us. What he presented was better than any scenario he presented when we were married. I could have a much more comfortable life if I agreed to these terms. They would be legally binding, but I still shut it down because this is the reason we got divorced. He's arguing that I'm ruining his life, and I think he did that all by himself. He thinks I'm being vindictive, and an outside opinion might be helpful. So, am I the jerk for refusing to move? Edit to add. Someone thought I should include that my youngest has a learning disability and is thriving in his current placement, and I do not want to remove him from his school or his teacher. Not the jerk. And honestly, it speaks volumes about both of you, and is fundamentally the reason why you're not the jerk, that you point out that this is the reason why we got divorced. This is the crux of the whole thing, and what your ex doesn't understand, that it isn't about the money. He thinks you're being vindictive and holding out for more, so he keeps offering more until it becomes almost grotesque how obvious it is that he thinks he just needs to buy you and your kids with the right amount to get what he wants. But he's missing the point completely. This isn't about money or about you being spiteful or vindictive or wanting anything from him. This is about the fact that you have a life where you are. He doesn't see you or the kids as whole humans, just as accessories to be dragged along to wherever he wants to be. But you are whole, autonomous humans. You have invested of yourselves where you live now. You don't just have a job, you have friends, a life, favorite places to spend time. And yes, you can theoretically make new friends, find new favorite places, but you don't want to. You never wanted to. He did. You like the friends you have where you are, the life you have now, and so do your kids. So why would all of you just give that up at any price just because he wants a different one? Why is his dream, as a single person, more important than all of your established lives? He needs to get his priorities straight. He's not the center of the universe. You all do not need to revolve around him like the sun, and you're not the jerk for understanding that. My friend and his fiancée are demanding to live with me. To me, this is simple that I've done nothing wrong, but some people are saying I'm the jerk, so I'd like the opinion of this fine sub. So I'm 28, male, and my friend Tom is 29, and his fiancée, Kat, is 31. Recently, Tom and Kat have come into financial issues and are unable to pay for their rent. As it stands, they can either move in with Kat's parents, who live roughly 2 hours away, or they can move in with me until they find another place to rent. Now, they would rather move in with me. I live alone in a 3-bedroom house, so I have the space. It would be easier for them as they can stay near our other friends and close to Tom's work. There's also a lot of parks nearby that Kat can take her dogs to for walks. That's all well and good for them. However, the idea of living with someone, let alone 2 people, does not sit well with me. I have 1 bedroom where I sleep. The other 2 bedrooms are my home office and my library. Furthermore, I love the feeling of coming home to an empty house. Everything is where I left it, and I can properly unwind. Also, living alone makes it easier to bring girls over. So I told Tom and Kat this, and they were not happy. They called me selfish for not sacrificing for them. They said a true friend would help. So I told them the blunt truth. I would be happy to help Tom. He works full-time and would respect my space. But I did not want Kat to live with me. Reasons being, she doesn't work, so she would be in my home much more than me. Her dogs are inside dogs, and I don't want that at all. And I told them that Tom has told me privately he gets frustrated that he comes home from work and still has to prepare dinner and do most of the chores. I told Kat she's lucky she's with someone who tolerates her and loves her, but I'm not like Tom. I'm not dealing with it. Kat breaks down crying at this point and calls me evil. I apologize to Tom and I tell him he knows my stance. This happened late last year. Right now, Tom and Kat are living with Kat's parents still, and I know it's hard for them. My mates know how Kat is and told me I did the right thing. However, people who are close to Kat are saying I'm a terrible person and I put them in a situation which might ruin their relationship. So, am I the jerk for not letting my friend and his fiancée move in? OP stands up for himself, sets boundaries, and gives a Karen a reality check. Let's see what our friends on Reddit have to say about him. I don't think your comments about Kat were appropriate. It's not your relationship, so it's not okay to tell her those kinds of things. The stuff you said about the dogs is fine. What you said about her being home more than you is fine. Questioning her commitment to Tom is not, even if she is a bad fiancé. You don't actually need to give any reason why you want to live alone, which is why the personal comments were even more unnecessary. You're the jerk. I was firmly prepared to say not the jerk until the part where you apparently publicly told them both what Tom had told you privately about Kat. As far as not housing them, that's fine and not what makes you the jerk. But you didn't need to go into every little detail, and especially didn't need to betray Tom's trust like that. Your handling of the situation is what makes you the jerk. You're the jerk. Not for deciding not to rent space to your friends, that's your choice, and you had several valid reasons for not wanting to, specifically these 2, as roommates. But telling Kat that she is the main reason and spelling it all out was unnecessarily harsh. Just tell them you don't want 2 dogs living in your house, and that's enough of a reason, or something else. No need to list one of the person's character flaws, whether they are valid or just as you see them. Everyone sucks here. Sure, it would be convenient for them, but it's ultimately your house, and anyone who expects you to go out of your way to home them is plain wrong. The next time anyone complains, ask them to volunteer their own house since they're so eager to offer up yours. On the other hand, what you said to Kat is excessive. You also shared something Tom told you privately, violating his trust. Not the jerk. Imagine if OP was a female and didn't want her friend and the boyfriend moving in because dude was a lazy slob who didn't work or help with any chores. Would you all be tearing OP apart for not wanting them staying with her if that were the case? Of course not, because Reddit hypocrisy. Everyone sucks here. They should have accepted your no and not tried to guilt you into accepting them to move in. You should not have betrayed your friend's confidence about what he said about his fiancée. I get that you were frustrated by them being pushy, but you didn't need to go to that extent to achieve your goal. You chose the nuclear option because you knew it would end the argument. Now you deal with the fallout. Good rule of thumb. If you're going into a fight with he said, she said, facts as your weapons, you've already chosen poorly. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his friend and the fiancé? Please let us know. I'm proud of OP for not being a pushover, and it's a shame how all these little goofballs can't handle the truth. Am I the jerk for prioritizing my parrot over my stepdaughter's wedding? So I'm the owner of a wonderful rescued parrot. She's a wonderful bird, but has a lot of issues due to her former home. I've had her for 3 years, and since then haven't taken any vacations or trips away as it would be too disruptive for her. She distrusts everyone and is very reliant on her routine. I love her deeply, and I'm happy to make sacrifices for her. They are permanent toddlers and very intelligent birds. I met my husband by the time his kids were older. My stepdaughter was 16 at the time. We married when she moved away for college. Nevertheless, I thought we had managed to have a decent relationship until now. My stepdaughter is getting married in March, and naturally, there are a lot of preparations involved. They're wanting a huge traditional wedding, and she's stressed out of her mind. They live out of state, and she invited me recently to come visit for a week to help make wedding plans and spend time with their 2-year-old. I declined, and she insisted to know why, acting very hurt, and I explained the parrot. Well, it all went downhill from there. She caused a massive fuss with her dad, saying she never got a mother figure and I never accepted her as my full-blood daughter, and this is the ultimate snub for a silly animal. That I'm cold and emotionless. I feel really hurt, and I can tell he agrees with her even though he's refusing to take sides. But I don't see why I should be expected to take holiday time off of work to babysit and bond all of a sudden, and I don't see how I'm a monster for this. Am I the jerk here? Edit. Context of our relationship. We don't usually talk at all, and she hasn't visited home in 4 years. Edit 2. Beginning to think it was maybe a mistake posting this, mostly because this is a real and nuanced situation, and Reddit is no place for nuance, and maybe personal relationships shouldn't be judged in the jerk context in the first place, but also because I should be more understanding and a bigger person, regardless of who is or isn't the jerk. Life is too short to be upset and offended. I called my stepdaughter and told her that I understand this is a big moment in her life and she wants someone there to help and support her, and that I'm still willing to help her in any way I can to plan the wedding via Zoom and virtually. We talked a bit, and I asked why she hadn't accepted me reaching out in the past, and she apologized and said she didn't want to accept someone as a stand-in, fake replacement for her biological mom. But now she regrets it and would like a closer relationship, especially seeing how close her significant other is with his mom. We ended the conversation positively, and I'm hoping things can improve going forward. I told her I'm a crazy bird lady and asked her if she still wants a relationship knowing that, and she said that after the wedding, she's willing to travel to visit us if we have room, which we do. I'll leave this post up, but I'm happy either way, and I'm glad the feedback here motivated me to make the call. Question: are you literally never going to leave the bird ever again? If so, that's not healthy. OP: no, I'm working up to her eventually being more independent, but it takes a long time to heal trauma with these birds. They have very strong memories, and I've only recently reached a point where she's finally becoming more comfortable. I rescued an African gray about 30 years ago. It does take time, but it's been 3 years. It does not take that long. My gray was fine after 3 or 4 months. It's not fair to say, my animal healed from trauma this fast, yours should too. My mom rescued a 1-year-old Chihuahua, and it was about 9 months before he'd even let us pet him. He's now 7, and just in the last year started showing interest in playing, as he would try to play previously and get too scared. There's no rule book for how quickly animals will heal from mistreatment. This isn't an animal you can simply drop off at a pet sitter. OP could lose the bird's trust if the bird thinks OP has abandoned them. Same time, you're already associating bonding as being a free babysitter. Also, a last-minute one at that. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Just sounded a little callous. But then again, you are not obligated to be her babysitter. Not the jerk. I'd normally say you were a jerk for putting a bird before family, but you've made it clear she's been pretty distant with you. The thing about relationships, all relationships, is they require effort and attention. Just because you're related, by blood or law, doesn't mean someone is entitled to your presence, especially if the relationship isn't exactly a good one. You aren't the jerk. I assume if your relationship were better, you'd make more of an effort. You're still going, so it isn't like you're skipping the wedding. Not the jerk, I don't blame you. Edit. Also, my sister has twins, and more often than not, spending time with the kids means babysitting them. This doesn't sound like a vacation, but a desire to put you to work. Not the jerk. Parrots are not just birds like budgies where you can ask a pet sitter to feed them and water them one week. Parrots are like gifted kids who scream and can rip your fingers off. There's an 80-year commitment and often only bond to a single person. Birds in general are extremely sensitive to any environmental changes, so someone who doesn't know what they're doing can end up hurting the parrot. Shame on everyone for saying choosing an animal over family like it's a bad thing. The parrot seems more like family than her stepdaughter. If it was that big of a deal, then stepdaughter would help make accommodations rather than just want a babysitter. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her stepdaughter? Please let us know. You're not obligated to go out there and spend a week babysitting for them. I'd pick my parrot over her any day. Break a leg, boss. I worked in a horrible little discount grocery store. I worked in the freezer department, and due to the fact that people would hang out in our freezers to pass time when there was nothing to do, Rose put a rule in place that an employee with higher status was to accompany other employees into the freezer at all times. Now, most of the time, no one followed this rule because it was dumb and we still did our work. For context, the store closes at 8, but all of the back staff clocked out at 5. I usually was there a little after 5, just doing last-minute stocking and cleaning. Anyhow, one night, as usual, everyone clocks out at 5. I'm finishing up with the freezer stuff. Rose happens to walk over and ask if I was still clocked in. Oh yeah, she would regularly ask me to clock out at 5 but to continue working. So much fun. Anyhow, she asks whether or not I'm still clocked in. I say yes. She asks why there's no hot wings out in the front where customers could get some. I said we were out and would be getting them on Monday, but she said they should be here by Saturday night. I said yes, but the shipment would be getting here after I left. I wouldn't be able to put it out until Monday. She asks if we can take a trip to the back to double check. I said that I know we don't have any, but she says she's the manager and she knows we should have some because she has no idea what's going on in the back. I decide to maliciously comply. I say I can, but I need her to come with me. She asks why I can't just get someone from the back, but I tell her they've all clocked out already. She says fine, but that she needs a jacket. Since it's the summer, she didn't bring one, and all of the spare ones are too small. So we go into the freezer, me bundled up in my blizzard attire, her in a t-shirt, dress, bonnet, and sandals. So we go in. It's literally snowing. I start climbing up boxes, crawling under stuff, looking, searching for this mythical box of wings. After about 15 minutes of thorough searching, she asks if I found them. I said no, but per her request, I'll keep searching. The quest continues. Now keep in mind, these freezers are about as large as a large school cafeteria. It took me about 45 minutes to check through the entire freezer, detailed to find the wings. I tell her I'm done in this one, and she, relieved, thanks me for looking. No, I say, this is just the first freezer. Still 2 more to look through. Her face drops. She says she thinks we're fine, but oh no, I insist. She said we should have some. I'm just following her orders. 2 hours and 30 minutes later, still no sign of the legendary chicken wings. We exit the 3rd freezer, and I swear her lips were blue. I shrug and say, I guess they aren't in there. She, relieved, says I can check out now. But oh wait, glorious day. The shipment of frozen stuff comes in. She wishes me luck and goes to leave, but I say, wait, I need to put this new shipment into their respective freezers, and I need a higher up to accompany me. She's clearly ticked off at this point, actively shivering, but hey, her rules, not mine. Another 45 minutes, give or take, and boy, were my hand warmers useful. All the crates full of frozen stuff is now in the freezer. But are we done? Nope. Since I'm still here, I might as well restock the shelves in the front of the store. And well, I need a manager to accompany me for that too. Before long, those chicken wings were out on the shelf, conveniently ready for customers to buy. At 8:30, I clock out with all of the front of store staff, and Miss Rose hangs out in the hot kitchen to warm up. $121 richer than when I woke up and went home and ate dinner. Come Monday, Rose announced that there were no longer limitations on who could be in the freezer and when, just as long as we kept our production on course. And I guess we did. Dumb rules, right? But it all worked out. I'm just happy she got cold feet when she did. It just sucked that she gave me the cold shoulder over her own dumb rule. Am I the jerk for bringing up her daughter getting expelled? This might be a little controversial, I don't know. But basically, my sister buys her kids, 3 boys under 10, whatever they want. But get this, they aren't spoiled brats. She's taught them manners, how privileged they are, etc., and will absolutely discipline them if they misbehave. But she has never said no to buying them a toy or anything unless it was harmful or whatever else. She thinks that if she can afford it, there's no reason to say no. Again, unless it's dangerous or something. The boys also have a room stocked with toys. It's actually pretty cool. They have their own rooms as well, but that playroom goes hard. I'm saying this as a 22-year-old woman. My sister's sister-in-law isn't a huge fan of this. She thinks that my sister is spoiling them and that even if it isn't showing now, it's bound to make them misbehave in some way soon enough. My sister tells her sister-in-law to mind her own business. I'm on my sister's side simply because I know her. She's a wonderful mother and a teacher. Her sister-in-law is just jealous because of how close my sister is to her kids, because one thing about those boys, they love their mom. Her sister-in-law's relationship with her kids is complicated. Anyways, my sister hosted a girls' night with me, our sisters, and her sister-in-laws. Her husband was out and her kids were in bed. We were having a good time when sister-in-law left to use the washroom. All of a sudden, we heard a loud crash coming from the playroom. My sister almost had a heart attack, thinking one of the boys had snuck into the room and got hurt. Nope, it was just her sister-in-law. She was basically trying to take some of the toys and had put a couple in her bag. My sister was just shocked and asked if she was being serious. Her sister-in-law just shrugged and said that they have too many toys and the toys will probably be better off with less privileged kids. My sister told her to get out, but she kept arguing, saying that she's raising spoiled and entitled kids and that she's scared for the future generation. My sister was about to lose it, so I cut in and said that she should be concerned for her own kids, considering her eldest just got expelled for bullying. It went quiet and she started crying. She called me a jerk and said she was only trying to help and I had no right to bring up her daughter. She insisted that her daughter getting expelled has nothing to do with the situation and I was just trying to insult her. She did leave though. The rest of us helped clean up, but one of the sister-in-law's sisters said that I shouldn't have brought up her kids. I called her to talk, but she hasn't answered. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Good for you for standing up for your sister. And what? Sister-in-law trying to steal her nephew's toys? Insane. She would not have left if you hadn't thrown that out there about her daughter. It seemed like she needed a reality check and you gave her one. Sister-in-law is jealous of your sister and her great relationship with her sons and good parenting. Good for you. Not the jerk. Your sister is doing an excellent job with her boys. The teen years can be challenging even with good kids. Having a positive, healthy relationship going in makes it so much easier. Having a good relationship with your kids doesn't just happen. It's something that's nurtured from a very young age. Spending quality time doing things with them, allowing them to participate in decisions, teaching them to be respectful and considerate of others. Not the jerk. Her daughter being a bully is probably directly connected to her being a bully, like in this case towards your sister. Not the jerk. She was acting entirely out of line, essentially stealing from someone else's kids, and was planning on giving it to her own kids, assuming also the suspended child, which is rewarding bad behavior. She wanted to control how your sister parents her kids, but was insulted when you brought up her own parenting, or lack thereof. She can't have it both ways. As a side note, was she just expecting to fill her purse and walk out without your sister realizing toys were missing? What kind of Grinch nonsense is this? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or sister-in-law? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for embarrassing my brother-in-law's new wife in front of everyone? For context, it was not my intention, but it was absolutely how it played out. My brother-in-law, husband's brother, was away for college for 4 years and ended up eloping with a woman he had known for 7 months. None of us knew her, not that it mattered, but we just met her for the first time back a few months ago. She seemed pleasant, a bit shy, which is to be expected, and a bit rough around the edges. No big deal at all, but just like fidgety, darting her head and looking behind her shoulder like someone was standing there when no one was. We found out a few short weeks later that she has bipolar, unmedicated, so her behaviors absolutely made sense. I'm an RN as well as a social worker, and I also have bipolar, but I'm medicated. On Saturday, mother-in-law invited the whole family down for dinner, and brother-in-law and his new wife, Hannah, show up and we got to chatting at the dinner table about her diagnosis. She brought it up, not me, but she knew I knew about it, so it started as small talk, I believe. Well, it didn't take long for her to dive deep into this conversation, using her arms and hands to talk, getting a bit loud. No problems, the family is loud, so she fits right in. But then she became angry over nothing. Started saying stuff like, "It absolutely repulses me that people without bipolar try claiming they are manic when mania is strictly a bipolar thing." I wasn't rude by any means, but I did correct her, quietly, and said, "Actually, mania comes in all forms, and it's not limited to bipolar disorders. Even people with brain tumors have been known to have manic episodes." She immediately said I was wrong, that her doctor told her it was strictly a bipolar thing, etc. So I just stood firm and said, "He's wrong," and even pulled up my medical ebook to show her the paragraph that speaks on mania and everything that can cause an episode. She refused to read it, so I just turned to my husband, who wasn't paying attention to us, and said, "Honey, you're a doctor. What causes manic episodes?" He starts listing off multiple things, including manic depressive episodes, seasonal affective disorders, postpartum psychosis, and schizoaffective disorder. Well, Hannah was ticked. She immediately said that we were just trying to one-up her and that she knew what she was talking about. My husband immediately said, "Obviously not if you're going to sit here, argue, and gatekeep symptoms of illnesses against two medical professionals." He then turned and walked off, leaving us at the table with both brother-in-laws, sister-in-law, and mother-in-law looking on. Hannah then starts crying, saying I embarrassed her on purpose for no good reason other than my pride, and stormed out of the room after screaming for everyone to stop staring at her. Brother-in-law is telling me I should have just shut my mouth and storms after her. I'm really confused if I'm the jerk here. ETA, making an ad to include some key points here. I was quiet throughout this entire conversation. I was speaking so no one else could hear, which is exactly why my husband, who was sitting directly beside me, had no idea what we were talking about until I brought it up to him in the conversation. She did not appear to be in any sort of episode when the conversation began, other than the first initial spew of how it repulses her. She calmed down immediately afterwards, and only slowly showed how manic she was after raising her voice at my husband for simply stating what can cause a manic episode that does not include bipolar. I was having what I thought was an academically correct conversation with an individual as small talk, mentioned in my post. She was the one who became loud and belligerent. No one at the table had any clue what me and Hannah were even talking about until Hannah started screaming at me over the table. It's my job as both a social worker and an RN to educate individuals whom are uneducated on their illness. So yes, that probably played a part. It's more dangerous to be uneducated than it is to be educated, and to be blunt, her doctor giving her false information to begin with is troubling in itself. Not the jerk. I hate it when I'm having what I think is a strictly academic discussion with someone and they start to take it all personally. Same. I work in healthcare and now I'm super skittish about answering general conversational questions. So often it turns out that they only wanted me to back up their self-treatment protocol or their perception of their condition even though I don't know anything about their health. Or they will ask me about a wellness influencer and I think they're asking a simple question, but really they get angry that I don't know who they are. And then get mad again because I say I can't comment on them without researching their credentials and their advice. Not the jerk. Hannah's diagnosis does not give her a license to rearrange reality as she sees fit, and she brought up the topic in the first place. Not the jerk. She embarrassed herself by doubling down. Sounds like you gave her plenty of opportunities to retract her statement. Not the jerk. She embarrassed herself. Your husband is absolutely right. She's gatekeeping her illness. I'm not sure where you should proceed from here, but going forward, I'd probably go low contact. If her whole family is with her on this, it'll constantly be brought up that this argument happened. I'd save myself the headache. You're the jerk. You can hide behind lots of different justifications, but the bottom line is you argued and were confrontational with a woman who you knew was feeling vulnerable and probably did so for bad reasons, such as a desire to dominate her. If you were as well informed as you claimed, you should know that an emotional reaction to a situation is 100% not the same as mania, and you might want to reflect on why you tried so hard to shame her. I don't think you're okay with brother-in-law eloping with a new woman you hadn't met. You spent a good amount of your post listing all the reasons you are superior to her, which seems unduly defensive. My advice is apologize to her, to brother-in-law, and your in-law family, and hope that you can be quickly forgiven. Make it your goal to ease this woman's entry into your in-law's family from here on out. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or sister-in-law? Please let us know. Believe it or not, you don't always have to correct someone in a conversation if they're academically incorrect about something. There are some people out there who you're better off letting them believe whatever they do and just, not dealing with them. Am I the jerk for bringing the receipts when my ex had me shunned from our mutual friend group? I'm 26, female, and my ex-boyfriend, 27, male, broke up with me a week ago. It felt sudden to me, and there was no warning it was going to happen. However, we handled it very amicably, in my opinion, and he wanted to try and stay friends. I met him online through a mutual friend and had been friends with him and the rest of the group for a few months before dating. When I went into the hospital back in August, I sort of just fell away from that group of people where I couldn't be online. However, one of our mutual friends had caused a lot of drama and we both cut her out of our lives because it was very toxic. Now, in December, she reached out to me, apologized, and we started to talk slowly again. My ex-boyfriend during this whole time would message me and tell me over Discord that he couldn't stand her and said that I could talk to her, but he was completely done with her. I'd always ask him about hanging out with other friends or playing games with other people and encourage him to do so while I was sick and or offline. His responses were always, "I don't really talk to anyone anymore," or "I only want to talk and play with you." And when I dig deeper, he said they all just fell out of touch. Fast forward to the breakup. The first thing he does, after our apparently amicable and no hard feelings talk, was to go straight to that mutual friend he said he hated with a passion and tell her everything I ever did or said wrong in our relationship. He told her a private conversation we had where I jokingly brought up how often she cycled through flings, and then told her and every other mutual friend we had that I was the reason he stopped talking to everyone, that he was worried I'd get jealous or upset if he talked to or played with anyone else but me. Because, and I'm quoting him verbatim here, "I know how I would feel in that situation, and I didn't want to put you through that." I'm sorry, what? So this friend came at me over DMs and asked why I would say and do such things. I was shocked and extremely hurt. I never would ask or make someone give up his friends or isolate them from anyone, as this seems controlling and I didn't want that. So my petty self said, forget this. I went through our past conversations, took screenshots, and privately messaged everyone he told this BS to, apologizing that I was the reason they lost their friend, then followed up with the pictures to prove he did this on his own and against my wishes. These photos may or may not have also shown the crap talk he said about that one mutual friend. He's been blowing up my phone since, asking how I could do that and call him out like that. All he wanted was a clean break and to get his friends back, and that I'm a jerk for making them question him. I haven't responded because in my opinion, he lied about me and our relationship to friends we both had, who then took his side, no questions asked, and kicked me out of their lives and Discord servers based off word of mouth. So Reddit, am I the jerk for sending proof to our friends? So not the jerk. I can't even imagine how twisted he got himself to try and throw you under the bus like that. OP, I assume it was his way of getting closure, but it was very cruel and so out of left field, especially since he was the one who broke things off. Not the jerk. He was the one to expose your private conversations by telling the one friend about the offhand comment you made before you got to know her better. And then he used that to start a smear campaign against you. If he's going to start some BS like that, he really should have thought things through. Yeah, you could have just walked away from that mess and the people who would blindly take his side without talking to you first, but revenge is so much sweeter. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. You just finished what he started. He wanted to show them one text that reflected you in a bad light, and you showed them all the text to clear up any confusion. Was it a jerk move on your part? Maybe, but it's a justified one. His way was manipulative, and yours was informative. I'm sure your friends are all a bit uncomfortable with being put in the middle of this, but they can all talk to him about that since he's the one to drag them all in here. I'm sorry your breakup wasn't as amicable as you thought. At least he's out of your life now, and you can see what a huge bullet you dodged. Sounds like a situation I was in with online friends. The guy tossed me under the bus to make himself look good and me look bad. I let it go at the time, but over the months and weeks after, they'd ask me questions, and I'd just share screen with them so they could see unedited Discord conversations. Your guy messed around and found out. He got exactly what he deserved. Zero sympathy for him. You absolutely dodged a bullet just like I did. Remember this going forward also. It's a life lesson. Not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her ex? Please let us know. Life tip for more happiness. Stay off of Discord. Something about being in Discord servers just makes people want to fight and start drama with you. Stay off of Twitter too. You will be so much happier. Am I the jerk for making a scene and kicking my cousin out of a baby shower? My wife, 28 female, is pregnant with our first kid. She's about 5 months along, and I, 29 male, am very excited to be a father. This past weekend, we had a baby shower at our house. We invited both sides of our family rather than trying to do 2 separate baby showers. I have a cousin, Sue, who's 22, who I wasn't going to invite because she's very open about being child-free. She said some very out there things in the past about these topics, and I figured she wouldn't want to come even if we invited her. But after getting pressure from both my mom and Sue's mom about not leaving her out, I reluctantly sent Sue an invite, and to my surprise, she accepted. For the most part, things went well at the baby shower. But when my wife started opening presents, Sue kept making comments. First, it was about how much waste diapers create and how wasteful baby clothes are because they outgrow them so fast. Then it was about how so many babies and kids' toys are made overseas where workers are taken advantage of. Then, when my mom told us that they had already set up a college fund for our kid, Sue made a comment about how parents shouldn't force their kids out of the house at 18 and how if people had to support their kids all through life, maybe less people would have kids. It was at this point that I pulled Sue aside and talked to her in another room. I told her that if she hates the idea of kids so much, then she might as well just leave. She said she was just stating facts and that the truth can never be controversial. I told her that in that case, I have a hard truth for her. I told her that the only reason I invited her is because her mom practically begged me to, and I don't want her in our house and that she's no longer welcome, so she should leave. I must have raised my voice louder than I thought because my mom and Sue's mom came into the room and asked what was going on. Sue said that I'm kicking her out because she's child-free. I told her I'm kicking her out because she's being a jerk on a day that's supposed to be about celebrating my wife's pregnancy, and all Sue is doing is making it about her BS beliefs. My mom and Sue's mom tried to calm things down, but I insisted that Sue leave right then and there, or I would be forced to call the police because she's currently trespassing. Sue grabbed her things and stormed out, and my mom and Sue's mom got mad at me. They told me that Sue was just stating her opinion and that some of the things she said are true. I told them that there's a time and place for that kind of conversation, and a baby shower sure isn't it. I told them this is exactly why I didn't want to invite Sue in the first place, and as far as I'm concerned, they're just as much to blame as she is. Literally, no one is happy, and the whole baby shower became about something else instead of focusing on my wife and our upcoming baby. There's a time and a place for stating your opinion. Being a jerk when someone is opening a gift and talking about how wasteful that gift is and so on is not that place or time. Not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Sue? Please let us know. People who spend their lives obsessing over the fact that others choose to have kids, people like that need help, bruh. New Karen neighbor demands to use my Wi-Fi. I, 24 female, share a house with 2 others of similar ages. We all work as freelance creatives and don't earn loads. Our next-door neighbor, Anna, name's changed obviously, moved in a few months ago. She has 2 kids who are 8 and 10, and she's a single mom. I was raised by a single mom, and so obviously wanted to make sure she was okay. I said if she needed a hand settling in, just let me know. A week later, she knocked on my door asking to use the Wi-Fi for her kids, saying that she was having trouble getting the electrician in. Totally fine. A couple weeks pass, and we get a knock on the door, and a kid, her kid, is standing there with the mobile asking for the password. I give it to him as I'm not really going to say no to a kid. A month or so passes, and we're having a few issues with the Wi-Fi. Nothing major, just buffering and stop and starts on Zoom calls. But I work from home sometimes, so need fast Wi-Fi. I texted Anna asking if she had gotten an electrician in. I know she hasn't, as I can see she's connected, but as a gentle nudge. There are now 7 additional devices on our Wi-Fi at this point. She says she's still having issues getting an electrician in. Fine, whatever. It's around the holidays, I get it. Fast forward to now. It's been nearly 3 months and no sign of an electrician. All her devices are currently using our Wi-Fi and we're still having issues with speed. We could upgrade it to be faster, but it's about $20 more a month. My roommate says just to cut her off and not say anything, but I feel bad doing that to a single mom. She also has not attempted any kind of contact or friendship with us besides asking for the Wi-Fi, or asked to extend using it or offer to chip in for it. We have been friendly, giving her a gift for Christmas and offered to babysit should she need it. 5+ years experience doing this. Would I be the jerk for just cutting it off and claiming that we are having issues with it? Not the jerk. Just be honest with her that it's impacting your work and only you and your roommates can be on it. Also, you don't need an electrician to get Wi-Fi, unless you don't have power at all. Saying she needs an electrician for Wi-Fi doesn't even make sense. Not the jerk. She's using you. Someone who has 7 devices has the money for her Wi-Fi. It's clearly not a problem for the engineer not coming, but her not even asking for a Wi-Fi installation. Change your password. Your work is more important than those kids' internet connection. Not the jerk. I think you should just be honest though. Just explain that you need fast internet to work from home and that it's affecting your roommates as well. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is her neighbor? Please let us know. When will people learn you never give your Wi-Fi password to anyone? Sometimes I think the people who write these stories are just too nice. It gets to me. My daughter demands I pay for her wedding. I have 3 daughters who are 29, 27, and 22. The older 2 are happily married with families of their own. I paid for both of their weddings, around $20,000. My youngest daughter is with a guy that I just can't stand. I'm really not a fan of him. He's 30, hasn't lived on his own until he moved in with my daughter 6 months ago, only 3 months since they started dating. He's had 2 jobs during that time and is currently unemployed. He was fired from both, and he has a ton of stories about how it was everyone else's fault in both cases. It's also everyone else's fault that he couldn't move out of his mom's, and I have a feeling my daughter is paying more of their bills than he is. He moved in with my daughter because he said his mom was mistreating him at home, and it was hurting his mental health. But I'm starting to think that the mistreatment was more so people having some bare minimum expectations for the guy. He seems to have a serious issue taking accountability. He has poor hygiene, is lazy, and to be honest, not all that intelligent. They both live like slobs and are constantly struggling to pay their bills. Well, my daughter came to me the other night to let me know they had started looking at wedding venues and wanted to know what their budget would be. Mind you, they've been together 9 months and aren't even engaged. I told her $0 and that they had no business getting married. She got huffy with me and then told me, well, I guess we'll just have to elope. I told her that was fine. I can't stop her from doing it, but she needs to understand that if she wants to make these kinds of adult decisions, then she will be treated like an adult, and her husband will be responsible for taking care of themselves and whatever kids they have. She's mentioned having kids young many times as well, and that dad wasn't going to just bail them out whenever. Now she won't talk to me, aside from saying that I don't get to dictate who she marries, and that her sisters both had their weddings paid for, so I obviously don't love her the same. I do love her, but she has always been desperate to grow up and get married, and I'm pretty sure she's more in love with the idea of marriage than she is with this guy. She can be very immature. She is the baby in a large extended family, and I think that has a bit to do with it, which is why I don't want to enable this fairy tale that she's cooking up. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Oh, look, another controlling dad who thinks he gets to decide who his daughter should be marrying. I can tell you firsthand that parents like you are what drives their kids away. Don't be surprised when your daughter goes no contact with you. She's a grown woman. That means she gets to decide who she loves. I can only imagine how controlling you were when she was growing up. You have absolutely no right to an opinion on whether or not she should marry this man. Having a job isn't what makes someone a good person, and it's too bad that's all you care about. This is why I'm so glad I didn't grow up with a dad. My mom was a single mom, and she raised me to respect others. If I had a dad like you, I can only imagine how controlling and judgmental he would have been about my partners. If you actually love your daughter, you better drop the attitude and put your money where your mouth is. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. That last commenter was a perfect example of why I've lost all hope for future generations. Am I the jerk for pulling over for a funeral procession? My wife and I went back to my hometown to visit my family this week. Where I grew up is across the country and much more rural than where we live currently and where my wife grew up. We decided to go see a play in a nearby city that my wife has been wanting to see, and we were running a little late because she didn't get ready on time and we were in a rush. A few minutes into the drive, I saw a funeral procession coming down the road towards us, so I pulled over and put my hazards on. My wife then asks me what I'm doing. I tell her that a funeral procession is passing by, so I have to pull over. She asks why and says that it isn't against the law to keep driving. I say that I know it isn't against the law, but it's a sign of respect that I've always been taught to do. She then starts to get irritated and says that if we sit and wait for them to pass, then we're going to miss the show and they won't let us in. I said that maybe it's a cultural difference, but I'm truly sorry if we do miss the play, but this is something I feel strongly about, and I'm not going to move until they've passed. My wife then gets even angrier and says that she doesn't understand why I have to act this way. I then tried to explain myself as best as I could. I told her that some of those people in that line are currently having the worst day of their life. They're on their way to say goodbye forever to someone that they love. Having been there before, it can be infuriating watching the world continue to go on as normal as your life is being totally shattered. Why isn't the rest of the world mourning a beautiful life being taken? In that short ride between the funeral and the grave, our local culture acknowledges this unfairness. I pointed at the cars behind us and said that each of those people have places they need to be as well. By stopping, we're saying to the grieving, we may not have known the deceased, but we will acknowledge both them and your grief by putting our lives on hold for 5 to 10 minutes while you pass. I've been in that line before, and this simple act by others meant a lot to me. My wife just argued that I was putting the feelings of complete strangers over her, and I knew how much she wanted to see this play, and I was taking that away from her for people I don't even know. I stood my ground and didn't move. By the time it had passed, there was no chance we would make the play, so we went home. My wife is still angry at me and wants me to apologize, which I did for her having missed something that she was looking forward to, but said I would still do it again. Edit. I honestly never expected to wake up to this many comments. While I am fully ready to accept my judgment, I would like to just say that I did not do this to teach my wife a lesson, as a lot of people seem to think. This is something that I've always done, as well as everyone that I know from my town. Edit 2. I've read through pretty much all of the comments, and this really seems to be a matter of cultural differences. Everyone is free to their own opinions, of course, but it is a little hurtful to read all the comments saying that I just did this out of spite. It may be unbelievable to some, but this practice is followed by practically everyone where I'm from. I've on occasion been late to different things in my life due to it, and all I've ever had to say is, sorry, I stopped for a funeral procession, and everyone immediately understood. If you want to call me a jerk anyway, I won't argue. I just don't want judgment passed based on motives prescribed to me that simply are not true. You're the jerk as much as I can relate. I live in the South where it's the custom. If no one else was pulled over, it sounds like you were trying to start your own cultural tradition, and it didn't do much for your marriage. I suspect a bit of passive-aggressive behavior here. Your wife caused a delay in starting out, so is this your way of teaching her a lesson? Or were you so uncomfortable at the thought of arriving late that this seemed like a convenient way to go home and avoid that? If this is typical, you two had better get couples counseling ASAP. You're the jerk. You didn't know these people, but you do know your wife. Would they have been upset if you didn't pull over? Maybe. Did your actions upset your wife? Yes. You missed the play to prove a point. Pulling over may have been a fine custom once in small towns, but it doesn't work so well now. I live next to a town where funeral processions are, for most of the people around us, a major headache. Yes, some people have to yield to the procession, but everyone else should just keep the traffic flowing. Whenever I've been in a funeral procession, I've not been in a mood to pay attention to whatever I was passing by. The person who's being honored is definitely not going to know if anyone stopped. You prioritize the vaguely possible feelings over a bunch of total strangers over your wife. You're the jerk. Virtue signaling at its finest. Tell me you're a sanctimonious husband without actually saying you're a sanctimonious husband. If my husband tried to pull some crap like this with me, he'd be single. Disrupting the flow of traffic and making your wife miss her play was completely unnecessary. Don't be surprised when she leaves you for someone who doesn't feel the need to virtue signal what a saint they are. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I think it sounded like kind of a nice thing to do, but what do I know? I'm just a Karen. Am I the jerk for refusing to take my ex-wife to my son's wedding? My son is 22. My daughter is 18. 6 years ago, my daughter caught my wife with another man. She told her brother, who understood what she had witnessed, then they both came and told me. I verified that it was true, then I divorced my wife. During the divorce hearing, both of them expressed a desire to stay with me, so I was given primary custody with her getting 1 week a month. She moved in with the other guy. I've done my best to cut my ex out of my life. Our communication is limited to the bare minimum needed to coordinate custody and shared expenses, and I've never talked about our relationship to my kids. Initially, after the divorce, she told me that our kids were giving her crap when it was her custody and that I needed to talk to them. I sat them down and asked if this was true, and they said that they didn't want to stay there. But I explained that it would be best for everyone if they remained civil until they turned 18, so we wouldn't have to go back to court. I didn't get complaints after that, so it seemed to be working. When my son turned 18, he moved back in with me full-time and started college. He graduated now, and he's getting married in a few months. My daughter turned 18 last summer and moved back in with me full-time too. My ex-wife called me today and she started crying, saying that she was not invited to my son's wedding. Then she told me that my son hasn't talked to her in over a year. He had still been dropping in after turning 18 to visit his sister sometimes, but eventually stopped doing that too. Likewise, apparently my daughter stopped talking to her after turning 18 too. Then my ex-wife asked if I would bring her as my +1 so she could see her son getting married, but I told her if my son didn't invite her, it wasn't my place to bring her. Then she started accusing me of turning them against her and threatening to take me to court. But I told her that there was no more custody agreement to take to court since both of them are over 18, and I hung up. I sat down with both of them later and asked them if they had cut contact with their mother, and they both admitted it. I explained to them that they did not need to do that for my sake, and I still recognize she's their mother. But they both said that they had talked about it a lot, and their plan was always to hold out until they were 18, but they had no desire to be around her or the other guy because she had destroyed our family. I told them that they're adults, and if that's their decision, I won't pressure them to change it. I was telling my sister what happened, and to my surprise, she said my son wasn't being fair and I should make him invite his mother to the wedding. Am I the jerk for refusing the attempt? Not the jerk. She had 6 years to figure out how to at least repair enough damage that her kids wouldn't go no contact the moment they were able to. Sounds like the opposite happened. Not the jerk. Not the jerk, but your sister is. I don't know what's with people pushing family members to reconcile simply because they're blood related, but it's something that needs to stop. People are allowed to choose who they want in their lives, and just because someone helped create you doesn't mean you have to choose them. Your sister is being empathetic and putting herself in your ex's shoes. Your ex is no doubt heartbroken, but it's a result of her own actions that broke 3 more, far more vulnerable hearts. Your sister should extend your son the same empathic courtesy. Ask her to imagine that if she was saying her marriage vows, would she want the homewrecker who wrecked her home specifically there? Her biggest, most personal example of how to destroy a marriage? Also, anyone who thinks your kid's feelings are extreme should not forget the kids discovered her infidelity first and were forced into a position of either betraying you or ending their own family unit. Yeah, easy not the jerk for you and your son. Forget your ex-wife. Apparently, it's rude to ask customers to please not touch employee equipment. So I'm working 2 jobs while in school right now. One job is a more traditional serving job. The second job is at a counter service style restaurant where you order at the front and seat yourself with a table number in hand and an employee brings your food out to you. Yesterday was Sunday, which is our busiest and unfortunately least staffed day. I handle rushes at this job really well despite being fairly new still. I had a line of about 6 people formed with a full dining room. I was assisting a customer who had just come in to pick up a to-go order. This took maybe about 2 minutes as I did have to make a couple of drinks. I was a bit to the side of the register when I assisted the current customer, so I politely informed the next guest I would be with them ASAP, and they told me to take my time. The guests waiting had already had their food, but they decided to order a dessert to go apparently. Literally about 20 seconds after they told me to take my time, the customer I'm currently assisting goes, while pointing in their direction. The customers in line are leaning over the counter and attempting to ring in their own order. I said, "Sir, please do not do that. As I said, I'll be with you in just a moment. I'm finishing this gentleman's last drink now." The customer sheepishly said, "We just figured we could ring it in ourselves." I said I'm sorry, but no. These are not set up to be self-service kiosks and they needed to wait. By this time, I was ready to take their order, but they had already managed to send an incorrect order through to the kitchen. They didn't mark it properly as to go, which, duh, they don't work there and aren't trained to know how to do this. So I had to go into the back and explain to the kitchen what happened and to not make that order and come back to the front and correct their order. They were in such a hurry, they ended up causing an even longer wait for themselves and the others in the line. The previous customer kind of looked at them like they were weirdos while he was leaving. They did mumble an apology and said they just assumed it couldn't be that hard, so they wanted to do it. I just politely reaffirmed that our store is not set up for this and asked them kindly to please be patient with me in the future and apologize that there was a wait that inconvenienced them at all. The man later called and complained, saying I embarrassed him in front of his family for scolding him, which is funny. I really was much kinder about it than a lot of my coworkers might have been, and also said that I told him he wasn't smart enough to do my job, which just isn't true. It was just such a bizarre interaction, I wanted to share it. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my brother be part of the family business? I, 44 male, have a younger brother, 41 male, and we are the only kids. Also, we are not from the US or any Western country, so please excuse any errors. My father passed almost 10 years ago. Since our mother was also gone, we divided his estate equally. His estate was a farm of 30 acres. Back then it had a house, a barn, a pond, wheat fields, and olive fields. Both of us were working office jobs in the city and did not want to be farmers. But after my dad passed, my wife convinced me to quit, buy out my brother, and start a business with her. She had degrees in business and hospitality. I was working in accounting. And that's what I did. I bought out my brother at market price. After that, my wife and I transformed the farm, got government subsidies to make our farm more sustainable, transformed the area by the pond into a garden and romantic strolling route and a fishing spot. The closest farm plots were made into a farm and some made available to guests to rent, built small houses, built a stable and bought some horses. We made it into a retreat where you can either spend the day, act as a farmer, or have some authentic food, or rent a cabin and try farm life. The rest of the farm was left to farm hands. Since we are barely 2 hours outside of city limits, it became a booming business. We're booked solid all year. We have schools coming for tours, activities every weekend, couples throwing their weddings here. And after the first 5 years, we were able to pay off our debt and are making great money. My brother used his money to buy a house, 2 cars, and on his children's schooling. And they're living well. I would say upper middle class by my country's standards, but nothing like me and my family. Now he says that what he wants is in on the business, that what he was paid was not fair. I told him no, that he got what his land was worth back then. Now he's no longer talking with me, and he's the only family I have left. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He got market value for his half. He used it up. You invested your time and money, and now you're getting your return on investment. No need to feel guilty. Not the jerk. If he had invested his half of the money into literally anything else, would he share the fruits of that investment with you? I don't think so. You had all the work transforming the place, and you had all the risk of it not working too. Also, it definitely sounds like you invested some of your own money too to make all that possible. He wants all the fruits of the labor without doing any of the labor himself. I get that you don't want to lose him, so maybe there's a calm way to talk about all of this, with a mediator present or something like that. He needs to understand that you invested the money and succeeded. But I mean, you could have failed too, and if you did, would he just give you money from his half? Am I the jerk for finding my friend's behavior uncomfortable? About 3 months ago, I, 22 male, started hanging out with a new friend circle. At first, I knew only one person in the group, but most of them are very friendly and it was easy to feel included, and despite not knowing everyone for long, I just feel like part of the group. However, I recently started feeling uncomfortable with the behavior of one of my friends, who I'll call B, 20 female. B is probably the one I've talked to the least. I don't dislike her, but I believe that she prefers to talk with people she knows for longer. This is not the part that bothers me. It bothers me how she acts around A. A, 21 female, is very extroverted and is the person that made me feel the most welcome in the group. It sometimes feels like the entire friend circle revolves around her, which is fair because she gets along with literally everyone. Now to the problem. B is very attached to A. I mean, way too overattached. If they are both in the same room, 9 out of 10 times, B will be right beside A. If A is, for example, laying on the couch when B enters the room, she sometimes will literally ignore everyone else and beeline to A, and sometimes just lay on top of her. No matter what the context is, she's always hugging or touching A in some way, and it's not even subtle. Obviously, I don't have anything against them being close, but I think A is just obliging B for the sake of peace. B doesn't act like this with anyone else, nor is anyone else as attached to A as B. Also, my other friends are more respectful of personal space, so often A and B are the only two who are close together when we're all hanging out, and it's just really awkward. Finally, one day I was talking with A. My other friends were around, but doing something else in the same room, when B just interrupts our conversation to hug A. A just laughed and continued talking, but I found B's behavior very rude. Since I'm not as close to B, I decided to speak to A about the situation. A few days later, I brought it up when we were alone. I told her that she should speak with B and establish some boundaries. She just kind of shrugged and changed topics, but I insisted, saying that B's behavior was uncomfortable to see, especially when it's all of us hanging out. I specifically mentioned the incident of the other night. To my surprise, she just laughed and said if it really bothered me, I should just close my eyes. I warned her that if she kept letting B act like this, people could get wrong ideas. Finally, she told me to keep to myself and pretty rudely told me to shut up. I was surprised since A had never talked to me like this. I was only expressing how uncomfortable I was, and I don't know why A was defensive since B is the one in the wrong here. Maybe I should have talked to B directly, but either way, I want to know if I'm really the jerk here. Edit. Many people here seem to believe A and B are dating. Maybe I made it sound that way. If it's any relevance, they are not. If they were, I would at least understand why B is so attached. Edit 2. It seems people seem to believe I have romantic feelings towards A. I would have said so if I did, but I don't. You're the jerk. This is where you should mind your own business. Everyone has different boundaries. If A is okay with it, why do you care so much? This has nothing to do with you. It's between B and A. You're the one stressing out over it. They're fine. You're the jerk. They're both okay with the situation, and I'm really unsure as to why you're so bothered by it. Are you jealous, perhaps? Is it some kind of insecurity you're unaware of? I recommend trying to find that out. I'm not sure why this even bothers you. They aren't affecting you at all. Plus, there could be a dynamic you're missing. It certainly seems that way. Stay in your lane, or you'll be finding a new friend group. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk or not? Please let us know.
Sounds to me like an A and B sort of thing. Perhaps he should see his way out of it.
Oh, you just had to do that, didn't you? My stepmom and siblings are just using me for money. I have several siblings on my father's side. In total, there are 3 with the same mother as me and 5 who are my stepmom's kids. Naturally, some siblings are closer than others, but I consider us as one big group of siblings. Almost everyone has gotten kids, and in total, my father has 25 kids and grandkids. 6 of those don't live locally. Of the siblings with a different mother, I'm the only one that lives close by. I'm gonna be honest and say I'm not the best at visiting, but my little family ensures to visit the few times we're invited. We rarely ask for anything, as we don't want to be the kind who only come around when we need something. Now that you have some background, here's the case. Before Christmas, I asked my father and stepmom if there would be anything at their place during the holidays. Usually there's a family lunch where everyone is invited. I was told that this year that wouldn't happen because having everyone over just was too much work and stress. I understood and I was fine with it. Then, January 1st, I suddenly see on social media that all 16 of my stepmom's kids and grandkids are gathered there for a family lunch. I heard nothing of it and straight up felt hurt. I know they often get together during the year and I'm fine with that, but this time I felt lied to. Except from asking a bit around, I didn't end up doing much about it. Until suddenly today, one of my step-siblings asked if we wanted to contribute towards a new PC for my father, as his one had broken down. I snapped and called my sister. I told her that I didn't like it how me and my family kept being forgotten for social family gatherings, but remembered every time there was a need for money. I then suddenly got an apology from my stepmom, where she basically blamed the lack of invitation on her oldest daughter. Some of her other kids said the same thing. I decided to ask my oldest stepsister directly about this, who told me she was being thrown under the bus. Now it's all just a big mess of drama, where some of the siblings support and understand my feelings, while others think I'm making a big deal out of nothing. As you probably can tell, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. We do sometimes get invites for birthdays and such, but thinking about it, it's only occasions where bringing a gift is mandatory. No casual dinners, board game nights, or family barbecues. So the question is, am I the jerk for claiming my stepmom and step-siblings forget about me when planning family fun time and only remember me when they need money? Not the jerk. Don't give them anything. They left you out on purpose. Whether it's the oldest sister's fault or not, they all decided it was okay to leave you out, knowing you would see their posts. That's messed up. Not the jerk, but your dad is for not sticking up for you more. Also, they did not forget. Your stepmom did this on purpose because she just wanted her kids there. Make sure your dad knows that and let him know you're upset that he is cool with his treatment of his kids and grandkids. Stop acting like a teacher. So I did. 3 years ago, I started working in a company where my manager was a jerk that would insult us and blame any problem on his employees, trying to get them against each other. I got burned out after a year of 10-hour days and weekends, and on top of doing tasks that were greatly above my paycheck and completely different from what I was promised as I got there. So I gave my resignations. My manager thought I was useless, as he often said about anyone but himself. So instead of trying to find a new employee, he decided he would take over my role, to the horror of all my coworkers. The only problem, I was the only person who knew perfectly the company ERP program, and I would have had to teach him my 1.5-year experience in 2 weeks. As I started to teach him, he got more and more frustrated and terrified by the amount of workload that was coming his way and started to insult me even more. But I was still trying to teach him the best I could for the sake of my coworkers. All of this until the first day of my last week. I was pointing out a mistake he was making every time he did a certain task, and he replied at me saying,
"Shut up! I don't need you acting like a teacher."
So, malicious compliance. I didn't. I just sat beside him for the next and last 5 days, not teaching him anything, and every time he couldn't remember how to do something, I would jokingly cheer him up, telling him I was sure he could come up with a solution himself if he focused enough. When problems would come up that I still didn't have the time to solve, I would tell him, "I don't know how this thing happened. It never happened to me. You should contact the client service. They taught me everything when I needed." The peak of this was when he got so frustrated that he started to repeatedly slam his mouse against the desk and then sat there staring blankly at the screen for 10 minutes. I had to actually keep myself from laughing in his face. After I left, I spent the next 2 months getting called almost daily by my ex-colleagues to help them find files or solve problems that they couldn't find an answer for and that I didn't have the time to teach them as I had to stay with the manager all the time. Am I the jerk for asking all the guests to leave after my brother and sister-in-law's pregnancy announcement? I'm 28, male, and my wife, Anna, is 28. We were expecting. She was almost 3 months. We were really excited. We bought everything a baby needed and talked a lot about our future with the baby. August 23rd, 2022, she miscarried. We had a really hard time accepting the fact, but Anna was much more affected. She would cry in our bed for at least 4 hours every day. She wouldn't eat, and she would say awful things about herself. I had tried to console her to the best of my abilities, but I was grief-stricken myself, and I couldn't say the right words to her. It took 4 months of therapy for us to gradually start feeling better. Anna was smiling more. She was still a little on edge, but she was doing good. January 14th was Anna's birthday, and I wanted to make it really special for her. I invited our friends and family and cooked her favorite foods. I just wanted this day to be happy for her. For context, our families know about this situation and the effect it had on Anna, especially my brother and sister-in-law, as we had stayed in their house for a bit. While everyone was eating the food, my brother and sister-in-law got up and told everyone that sister-in-law was pregnant. After 4 seconds of silence, everyone in the room started congratulating them. I was stunned and turned to my wife, having an emotionless expression until she smiled slowly and congratulated them and hugged them both. For a good 20 minutes, everyone couldn't stop talking about pregnancy, baby names, and new baby toys. They could have easily announced this at their 5-year anniversary party, which was just 2 weeks away. What was the point of announcing it on my wife's birthday? I noticed my wife get up and leave to go to our bedroom. I found her crying. She told me she doesn't want to go out now, that she doesn't want to face them. I understood and quickly headed to the table where everyone was done eating, talking as if they hadn't noticed we had left. I didn't want to make a big scene, so I told everyone kindly that me and Anna had some plans for the evening and that we would have to cut this party short. That was the only thing that came to my mind at the moment. Sister-in-law comes walking towards me and starts yelling at me, saying that I'm doing this because of her announcement. I tried telling her as calmly as possible that it wasn't like that, and this was supposed to be Anna's birthday party, not some pregnancy announcement party. I said my goodbyes, then 2 hours later I got a message from my brother saying I was selfish and that I shouldn't be jealous just because we won't be as careless as the two of you. Careless as in implying that we had somehow caused the miscarriage, even though we were incredibly careful. I'm beyond frustrated. Do you think I'm the jerk because of how I handled the situation? Not the jerk. Announcing your pregnancy at someone else's party is incredibly selfish. Doing so at the party of someone who has recently miscarried is beyond evil. And as for your brother's carelessness moment, I think that's a clear case of fighting words. You're beyond frustrated? That's it? I'd be enraged. I am enraged on your behalf, and I don't even know you. I'm not sure why you're tiptoeing with these jerks. Not the jerk, and I'd be laying into them. On what planet was this appropriate? Even if you guys hadn't lost a pregnancy, it's rude to make someone else's party about you, just like you don't announce an engagement at someone's wedding. And his later remark about being careful? What? If one of my brothers pulled a stunt like that, they'd get an earful from me, whether it was my party or not. The way sister-in-law got in your face screaming and that comment your brother made at the end makes me think they announced the pregnancy at Anna's party on purpose, wanting to upset her. I have some ideas why they would do that, but none of it matters. Nothing can excuse this kind of behavior, especially if they had their own party 2 weeks later. Keep taking good care of Anna and go no contact, and obviously not the jerk. I must not talk to you unless you address me first? As you wish. I, 43 female, am an experienced landscape gardener, but due to an accident many years ago, I can no longer work the actual craft. In 2020, after 12 years of being a stay-at-home mom, I began working in the office of a quite large landscaping firm. My position was assistant to management, with Jack, one of the COOs, as my direct boss. At the time, I did mostly supporting paperwork. A couple of months later, the company hired Becky as a junior manager. She had just finished her master's degree, and this was her first real job, so she had a lot to learn. In the beginning, she relied on me for the paperwork and how our programs worked, and I thought we got along well, even though we were as different as two people can be. In spring of 2021, there were some changes made. For one, our whole department moved to new office rooms, and Becky and I were put in the same office. Also, I was taken out of day-to-day paperwork to exclusively work on surveying to get all the measurements needed to correctly bill our clients. About that time, our problem started. I'm on the ADHD spectrum, so I have habits of unconsciously fiddling or talking to myself and other stuff that unnerved her. She needed absolute quiet while working, whereas I prefer to hear music over headphones. Every time she told me something I did would disturb her, I tried to stop myself from doing that, be it mumbling, listening to music while she's in the office, even drinking coffee because
Your slurping is disgusting.
I was not allowed to comment on anything concerning her. I'm a terribly curious person, and so on. Even though I love my job and everyone else in that company, that daily repression made me not want to go to work in the morning. It came to a head when one of our foremen was in the office. She gave him a task, he was annoyed, and I made a fun little comment that made the foreman chuckle, lightened his mood as intended. But after he had left, she exploded on me. How dare I undermine her authority, and how I had disrespected her position and what kind of a person I was. After all, she was a manager and I was merely the assistant. She went to Jack to complain about me, how she could not work with me when I was so obnoxious, yada yada. Long story short, Jack is a super chill boss. He talked to me to hear my side, and 3 days later, I moved all my stuff into another, smaller office where I've worked ever since. As I mentioned, I do the surveying for all managers' projects who need it, also for Becky. And she was very particular in how the plans had to be laid out, which items had to be on them, and so on. So when I did a survey and drafted the plans, we had to have several discussions and corrections about minute details none of the other managers even cared about. Everybody else, when I had a question regarding their projects, I would go to their office, see if they were free, and ask for the information that I needed, if I couldn't just draw it from the documentation. Not with Becky. She demanded I make appointments with her to schedule meetings to talk about these issues. That dragged work on her projects to absurd lengths. Also, she would give me deadlines for finishing and then take 1 to 4 weeks before even looking at what I had made. Then she would want to discuss that when I was already at the next project over. It was a pain. In December of 2021, we had another falling out when she questioned me about a project that I had finished in October and got upset when I couldn't immediately recall all the details. I mumbled something like, maybe assemble the bill not 2 months after finishing the project, and she blew up.
How dare you tell me how to do my work? I know what I'm doing. I don't have to put up with a lowly assistant.
I left, and luckily that was the last day of work in 2021. In 2022, work started with Becky calling me to her and instructing me on how we would proceed in the future. I was not to talk with her while working unless she approached me first or if we had a scheduled meeting. Also, I was only to talk to her about the tasks she had assigned to me, nothing else, as it was not my position to tell her how to do her job. Breaks were fair game, but by then my interest in making conversation with her had faded, so that's how it went. At this point, I have to mention that as part of my job, I sometimes look at the charts of work that has already been done, how much soil has been brought in, how much of which materials have been used, to get an idea of what needs to be included in the survey. In Becky's lists, I sometimes notice typing mistakes, like the surveyed amount of square meters entered when the volume, cubic meters, was demanded, which resulted in too high bills, which led to complaints by the client and reduction of the bill. I tried to tell that to Becky, but she stopped me before I really began, pointing out again I had to focus on my job and not to speak to her unless addressed by her first. Okay. For other managers, I would simply have corrected the mistake after quick consultation, but for her, nope. In the following months, I noticed a couple of these mistakes in her projects, but I kept my mouth shut. Also, did not go to Jack about it, because I did not want to appear like I was blackmailing her or something. Over the summer, I noticed more and more mistakes and how projects that had been finished in the spring had still not been billed. But somehow, Becky found the time to go on summer vacation twice. I noticed undocumented items, false entries, lacking entries, and other mistakes in the lists of her projects, and said nothing. In early August, she had finally assembled the bill for one of her bigger projects that had been finished months ago and forbade anyone to talk to her while she worked on the next. Then I received an email. The client who had received the aforementioned bill had rejected it due to the amount of mistakes and lack of confirmability. I had been CC'd as the surveyor, but the problem was not my surveys, but that Becky had not transferred the results correctly. The client denied payment and demanded immediate correction. The sum was around 250,000 euros, money the company had been waiting for months by the time. This was serious, so I decided to break my silence and tell Becky. She saw me through the glass door, and before my hand touched the handle, she yelled,
"Don't talk to me."
Well then, what's a girl to do? Wait for about 15 minutes until my super chill boss, who had been walking his dog over lunch break, returned to his computer. Of course, he had been CC'd as well, and his roar made the walls shake. Jack went to Becky's office and tore her a new one. Afterwards, came to me and asked me to please correct the lists as far as I'm able. In the following days, he went through all of Becky's projects, and needless to say, she's been gone since September. She wanted me to do everything her way, and I tried to comply with so much crap, but in the end, I complied so much, it got her fired. Am I the jerk for criticizing how my girlfriend acts during job interviews? My girlfriend is at a job she can't do remotely, and we're planning to move to another state together, so she's job hunting right now. Her first interview, she had a call with a top company whose recruiter had messaged her on LinkedIn. I was expecting her to treat it normally, but she spent an hour grilling the company on its engineering practices, then withdrew her application. And the next few calls with companies she basically grilled them all and decided against moving forward with 4 of the 6. I told her around then that I feel like she's making a mistake, being so picky, and she's gonna ruin her reputation in the industry if she's going around taking interviews and cutting the process off early. She said she wasn't making any enemies. The companies she dropped had been emailing and calling constantly, wanting to bring her in for another interview or asking her to reconsider. If anything, she was a hotter commodity. I felt she was probably still hurting her reputation long-term, even if her little power play was working for a bit. She said it wasn't a power play, it was professional. She just didn't want to waste anyone's time. But the next interview I overheard started a big argument. One of her final 2 companies had her taking a Zoom interview, and she was laughing it up with an interviewer, and he was telling her this story about how he and his coworkers fell off a barge into the river working on a project. And she was just like, "Wait, they had y'all doing that? Not tied off to anything?" Look, as funny as that is, that's honestly kind of messed up that they put you in danger like that. I'm honestly gonna have to withdraw my application. She got off the phone and said, "Dang, people really tell on themselves if you just listen and smile. Did you hear that?" And I said that I thought she ended it a little prematurely, like didn't even ask if they had changed anything there, just ended the call. I said it felt like she was trying to delay getting a new job. Was she getting cold feet or something? She said no, this is literally how people at her level interview. She was serious about the interview process, and she wasn't interested in walking into a crap show. I said that was BS. She was sabotaging herself on purpose by treating these companies like this who want to hire her. And she was like, "Why do they keep coming back for more then? Like, I'm critical, but I'm not wrong, and they know it." We had this big fight where she insisted that anyone who was at her level of a career interviewing companies to see whether they were worth their time, just as much as the other way around. And I said that was BS. She got mad I was telling her about her own career and said she knew it better. Am I the jerk for arguing with my girlfriend about her interviews? I feel like she's dragging her feet. She says she's interviewing normally for her field. You're the jerk. Stop mansplaining how to interview for a job that you do not do and in a field you do not know. It isn't an issue until it becomes an issue. Yes, I'm assuming OP's gender. You're the jerk. Your girlfriend is actually doing this right. She should be interviewing the company and withdrawing when they don't meet her expectations. They need her. She doesn't need them. I also don't walk into crap shows. I'm at the level and experience I don't have to. Sounds like she's in the same spot. It's also her job, her life, and her decisions on how to manage it. Are you going to work at these jobs with her? No? Keep your nose out of it then. OP. Well, you've convinced me. Plus all of the other comments. I apologized to her and we talked stuff out a little bit. To be honest, it's a lot of culture shock for me. I'm a first-generation college student, and I've never heard someone speak in an interview the way she did. And to be honest, I think I've been kind of hurting over how easy it is for her to go, thanks but no thanks, to roles offering $150,000 to $300,000 yearly. In my field, the most I'll probably ever make is like $70,000, and that's at senior levels. And I feel like I was just so incredulous that anyone would even consider turning down that kind of pay. She makes $160K now, so any of those jobs would have been a great salary. But she's a PE, which means she's liable for whatever work she does and holds herself to a really high ethics standard. And she has real concerns that a bunch of companies she's interviewing with could hurt someone doing what they're doing. Which was also a shock to hear about, to be honest. How a bunch of well-regarded companies are apparently sketchy behind closed doors. Like, I was so caught up in the, how could someone ever reject $200,000 or $300,000 from several top companies, that it didn't really hit me that her concerns were literally dead serious. And I jumped to thinking that she's dragging her feet on moving, which to be honest might be a bit of an insecurity too. So thanks to everyone who commented, I needed the wake-up call that I was being a jerk, and apparently an idiot at job interviews too. Sounds like she should have vetted you a little better. Stay in your lane. You're the jerk. Forced to move cabins by management. I used to work on cruise ships in the spa. Had been working for a couple years and was pretty good at my job, so I started training to be an assistant manager so I could step up to manager. Mainly for the much nicer work schedule and raise in pay because being a normal spa member was horrible. I was working hard, staying way past when I should have gone home, some days only going to my cabin for a couple of hours just to sleep, so I was hardly in my room ever. Then my roommate's contract ended and I got a new roommate. Let's call her Rita. Rita was Australian and just married. We were cruising the Mediterranean, so in order for her to talk to her husband, she had to call him at very odd times. I didn't mind as she wasn't super loud when chatting with him. The first month we shared a cabin was fine, nothing spectacular but fine. Then she woke up one morning and decided she wanted to try to make my life horrible. I don't know what I did to make her hate me. If I did, I would have wanted to fix it, as living away from your friends and family in such a stressful environment is difficult enough. I don't know, maybe she got cabin fever. So as I said before, I only really went to my cabin to shower and sleep, and that meant my stuff was hardly touched. I had the bottom bunk, so I kept my stuff at the foot of my bed and under a chair I was using as a bedside table. Her stuff, however, was all over the place. She also started being extra noisy whenever I was trying to sleep. We were set up to be on different teams, so a roommate will have some privacy for a couple of hours every time you had some time off, normally in port for a morning 3 times a week. I would start work at 7 a.m. and work until about 10 p.m., some days till past midnight. I was tired when I was in my cabin, but then she would insist on being the most annoying person on earth. She would dry her hair at 2 a.m., watch a movie on loud, drink beer loudly, and be noisy on the top bunk. Then she went lower than I could ever dream. She hooked up with my ex-boyfriend, who I broke up with because he cheated on me while I was there. I was so fed up with her and complained to my manager, who said I just needed to deal with it or date an officer with his own cabin. I was miserable. Then finally we had a cruise where head office was cruising with us to check on standards and launch a new product. I had known this lady for years and she knew me well too. We got along well. One night after dinner, I get called into the office. I thought maybe I was finally getting that promotion. Boy, was I wrong. Head office and my manager had called me in to tell me to move out of my cabin, in which I had been for 7 months with only 2 months to go. Apparently, Rita had gone and told them I was the horrible roommate, that I was being noisy on purpose and being disrespectful. She had even claimed that I stuck her toothbrush in the toilet. Toothbrush was shown to me, and I'd never even seen this toothbrush in my life. Also, it made me worry that maybe she had done this to my toothbrush. I fired back and asked my managers why they would think I would do something so disgusting after knowing me for so long. And they replied, they believed me, but as there's no way to disprove Rita, I had to be the bigger person and move out. I had an hour to pack up and transfer cabins. I was humiliated and heartbroken that someone would be so mean, but then anger kicked in. So I packed up my stuff, but I put on my most annoying music, blocked the toilet, knowing it won't be fixed until the next day, and placed the mattresses outside in the hallway so she would have to fetch it herself. Our cabin was also the only cabin with a mini fridge, and I took that whole thing with me, even though I didn't use it. I left all her stuff in the fridge on the counter and set the thermostat to hot. I had some glitter from parties that I spilled on the carpet and spread all over the floor. Whoops. My maintenance friends also heard of my unfair treatment and took it upon themselves to turn off the hot water in the cabin. And when it was reported, they put it last on the list of things that needed to be fixed. Rita complained about me stealing the fridge, but as it was never hers to begin with, and it was still in a spa cabin, there was nothing she could do. My new roommate was lovely, very happy to have a fridge, and never had a disagreement with me. Rita quit and went home 2 weeks later. Troublesome guest ruins it for everyone else. At our hotel, we have a pool. It's not the biggest or the best pool in the area, but it exists. A few months ago, the pool heater broke, so the pool was ice cold because of the winter temperatures. Our owner ordered a new one back in November within a few days of it not working, but it never arrived. After a few negative reviews about the pool not being heated and the order getting canceled, with no new heater arriving until February at the earliest, management decided to close the pool and take the time to do other things to it and make sure that the other parts are working properly. Less than a week after we closed the pool for this maintenance, I got a call from someone asking the price of a room. Told them the rate, but they didn't like it and said it was cheaper online. Said that if you can find a cheaper rate online, then book it, since I can't honor a rate that you say you found online, but warned them about how those rates have less flexibility and worse cancellation policies. They hung up without saying anything after that. A few minutes later, I see a new reservation come up from a third party with an infamous no cancel rate. For those who don't know, the no cancel rate from third parties is exactly how it sounds. No matter what, you cannot cancel the reservation nor change the dates, regardless of when you booked it. These are some of the cheapest rates you can find, but one of the worst reservations if things change. Bottom line, don't make reservations with this rate unless you know for sure you're going to be there for the dates you put in. Anyway, about 4 hours later, a woman shows up with her 2 kids, saying she's checking in under the no cancel reservation. I check it, and it's registered to 2 adults and 2 kids. As I'm starting to get the registration card printed with our hotel's terms on it, the woman asks what time the pool closes. I explain that it's closed because of our mechanical issues. She gets surprised, tells me in a kind of angry tone she booked the room so her kids can swim before she asks to cancel the reservation so they can go somewhere else. After I tell her that the reservation was a non-cancel reservation and she would not be refunded, she starts getting upset.
What do you mean you can't cancel? I haven't checked in yet, and your pool isn't working.
I'm sorry, if you booked directly through our hotel, then I could cancel. But I can't without you still being charged, as it was through a third party with their specific cancellation rules.
I called a few hours earlier. Why didn't you tell me the pool wasn't open? I wouldn't have booked otherwise.
It was a slow night, and I only had one phone call, so I knew she was the one who had just asked for room rates and wanted us to book it for cheaper than online. I was the one who talked to you, and you never asked about the pool, just the rate. We got disconnected after I said if you find a cheaper rate online to book it there, and I didn't have a way to contact you otherwise.
Well, either open the pool or I'm leaving. I expect a refund if I leave, or I'm going to leave a bad review.
Even if I wanted to at that point, I couldn't open the pool since we drained it the night before. I just said to her again that she is not getting refunded, so she can either stay the night or go somewhere else and still get charged the night. She left, but not before saying that she will be calling corporate. Sure enough, less than 10 minutes later, corporate does call and ask for my side. I tell them that she booked a no-cancel reservation after we couldn't honor a rate she saw in a third party, and that's why we aren't refunding her. They asked about the pool situation, and I told them that it was indeed closed, but the guest didn't ask about it, so I didn't warn her over the phone. The person actually laughed, saying if he had $1 for every time he got a call about an issue that wouldn't be one if the guest asked the hotel in advance, he wouldn't need to work. I laughed back and asked if he needed any more information. He didn't and said he'll tell the guest she isn't getting a refund and they needed to talk to the third-party site, not our hotel's brand corporate. An hour after we hung up, I get a call from third party asking about the reservation. Usually third parties kind of ask in a demanding way that we refund the guests or ask to refund them, which upsets me, but this person didn't. He just asked one single, normally like he was required to ask, and verified that it is a no cancel on my end. I confirmed, and he was like, "That's what I thought. Thank you," and hung up. I know I'm preaching to the choir with y'all, but book directly. It's the only way to have flexibility and to cancel, even after the hotel's cancellation policy if they make an exception. And especially if you're staying somewhere because of an amenity, make sure that it's open before you book. Whether you think I'm in the wrong or the guest, it doesn't matter. I'm not a heartless jerk, as someone DM'd me saying. I did feel for them, but there was nothing that I could really do about it. There was no way of notifying the guest that the pool was down unless I said that in the first second of the call. You can hate me because of this story. I don't care anymore. I don't need to explain every little detail of what happened for your amusement, especially since it seems half of you are trolls or want to stir up crap. Am I the jerk for changing the locks on my house after my fiance made a key without my permission? I, 25 female, own a beautiful 4-bedroom house. I bought it when I was 23 after letting my business partner take our shared assets in exchange for $600,000. We owned a few properties together since we had bought our first place at 20 and 21 back when we were dating, and even though we didn't work out, we stayed in business together. I closed on my house a few months after my 23rd birthday. I had only been working part-time while I was managing our properties, so aside from my bed and some little things from my apartment, I stayed in my house for months while it was basically empty. I had always wanted to be a pastry chef, and a local community college has a program that lets you get your certificate in almost anything for free with just 16 weeks of classes, and if you choose to continue afterward, your credits will roll over. That's where I met my fiance, James, who's 27. James was a chef at a high-end restaurant. He had been working since 16. He started as a busser and worked his way up. While he had a lot of experience, he wanted to have a degree to back it up. We hit it off pretty quickly. He even taught me how to drive, helped me develop recipes, and helped me pick out the perfect spot to put my bakery. He proposed to me in Jamaica on August 8, 2022. When we got back home, I moved in with him. I've been perfecting recipes in my house as I had taken the time to make the kitchen to my liking. I tend to put my phone on Do Not Disturb just to make sure I have no distractions. There have been a few times when I've missed calls from James, and I see that it really bothers him, but it's not like I go at random times. I have a set schedule, and I rarely go off of it. About a week ago, I finished baking quite early and ended up taking a nap. My phone was still on Do Not Disturb, and I woke up to James banging on the door. He told me he had been calling me for hours. I told him I had forgotten to take my phone off Do Not Disturb. He suggested that if he should have a key, he could use it for emergencies or in case something like this happened again. I said no because this is my safe space and I'm still adjusting to living with someone. The other day when I finished baking, I noticed it was raining and I decided to call James because I don't feel comfortable driving in the rain. He didn't call me when he got here. He knocked on the door, and when I opened it, he complained about getting wet while waiting for me and said he wouldn't have to wait if he had had a key. I pointed out that he could have called me and I would have just come to the car. He said that wasn't the point, and me not giving him a key was a slap in the face. Yesterday, I noticed he had one of those minute keys in his glove compartment while looking for my lip gloss. I left it in his car, and I immediately knew what he did and called my brother to help me change the locks. Last night at dinner, I let him know I found the key and told him it wouldn't be of any use since I had changed the locks. We argued, and we haven't spoken since last night. Am I the jerk? Everyone sucks here. You for not trusting your fiance enough to give him a key, and him for breaking your trust and making one without permission. You better get a rock-solid prenup protecting that house as a premarital asset if you still want to go through with the marriage, because it's going to go from your house to both of yours otherwise. Everyone sucks here. Your fiance should respect your boundaries. However, if you don't trust him enough to let him into your safe space, maybe you need to consider not getting married to him or being engaged yet. If you're going to spend your lives together, you should probably feel comfortable living with him. It sounds like you're pretty young and haven't known him that long. If you're not there yet, you need to have a conversation with him and be upfront about how you're feeling, why you feel that way, and how you think you can move forward as a couple, and be prepared for him to be upset or have his own opinions. It sounds like there's a bigger issue here than a house key. Everyone sucks here. He shouldn't have made the key without your permission, and you made it very clear he didn't have your permission. At the same time, this is your fiance and you live with him. Why on earth wouldn't you trust him with a key to your house? Especially when he has only asked for one in response to actual situations where it was problematic that he didn't have one. Your relationship seems very one-sided and, from the looks of it, may soon be very one-personed. You're the jerk. If I told my fiance that she couldn't have a key to my extra house because it's my safe space while living in her home and using her resources the whole time, I wouldn't have a fiance. The fact that he asked more than once for a key and you said no really makes me question your motives as well as your ability to have a real relationship with your fiancé. Trust and communication are the foundation of any healthy relationship, and you aren't very good at either. Am I the jerk for telling my mom the wrong name and embarrassing her? My husband and I had a baby last week. We announced to our close family and friends that we were pregnant at 11 weeks along. We said that we would be waiting to share until I was further along. My mother ignored us and posted our pregnancy news on her social media immediately. We got congratulations messages from dozens of people. When we learned that she had shared it, we told her to delete it as it was not her news to share. She argued, saying things like,
I'm the grandma. It's absolutely my news to share. You can't tell me what I can and cannot post online,
and so on. She finally took down her post after we begged and begged her. Skip to 20 weeks along, we were asked what his name was going to be. When we said we weren't going to share, no one complained except my mom. She constantly asked and would try to trip us up. After 3 weeks of her asking 3 to 4 times a day what her baby's name is, I decided to tell her that the baby's name is John. That's not true, but I wanted her to stop asking what his name was going to be. I then told her that she must keep it fully confidential and that no one else can know his name until he was born. I figured that she would leave it be and not tell anyone. That was a mistake. My mom, aunts, and cousins threw us a baby shower. Everything seemed normal except for a few people whispering and pointing at the gifts. I didn't think anything of it until I began opening the gifts. The first gifts were gifts from our registry. Then I got a gift from my cousin of a set of monogrammed blankets and pillows. I was confused as we hadn't said what the baby's name or initials were. I then opened my aunt's gift, which was a decorative frame with the name John. I got upset and my mom grinned. My mom then stood up, shushed the room, and said,
I know OP wasn't going to share it until after, but the baby's name is John.
It was awkward. Everyone looked confused. Those who my mom had already told stood around looking smug. I got up and whispered to her that we were not going to name the baby John. I had told her that so she would stop pressuring me to share the name. My mom's face got red and she mumbled something and left, along with many of my aunts and cousins on her side. The party was pretty much ruined after this, so I returned the personalized gifts and went home. I received calls from my mom's side saying that it was awful to embarrass my mom. My husband said she wouldn't have been embarrassed if she had kept the name private. Our baby came a few days after his due date. All of this drama has caused a lot of stress with my mom and family on her side. My husband, dad, and in-laws are incredibly supportive and have been gushing over our baby. My mom and her side have been saying rude things about us to the rest of the family. Am I the jerk for telling my mom the wrong name and embarrassing her in front of her family? Was it wrong to hide the real name? Not the jerk. Your mother has continued to prove that she is untrustworthy and selfish. Clearly, you didn't want to be in a position to have to lie to her, but she was being relentless. Not the jerk. I'm sorry your mom has so little respect for you and your privacy, and congrats on the baby. Would I be the jerk if I went to my daughter's birthday party? My oldest daughter is turning 8, and her dad's family, we've been divorced almost 2 years, is throwing her a pool party at our community center. Her dad and I are on minimal speaking terms. Not my choice. He chooses not to get along with me. And he is recently engaged, and his fiancée is pregnant. I barely know her. I used to be very close to his entire family. They're tight-knit, as my ex and I were high school sweethearts. But since the split, I'm very low contact except with his mom, who will always hold that mom number 2 place in my heart. And even then, I only see her when my kids are involved. My daughter invited me to her party, and I want to go because she wants me there. Her dad told me he would pick her up from my house and take her and her little sister to the party, so I mentioned that she had invited me to come. He responds that it's the first time his fiancés and his families will be meeting, and he won't say no to me coming, but asked me to respectfully decline my daughter's invitation. The day of her birthday, my daughters will be with me and we will celebrate, but it won't be a big party with her friends, etc. What would make me the jerk here? Declining and potentially hurting my daughter's feelings, which is not what I want to do, or attending and possibly making adults act like adults? Update. I also messaged him. Although I'm pretty disappointed that you've chosen your fiancé over your daughter's birthday wishes, I told her that she will have one celebration with each parent this year. I hope all of her future events will be about her and not about your fiancé, in-laws, or anyone else, quite frankly, and I can attend in peace. Have a good evening. I won't engage if he responds, but he gets to know these celebrations won't be about anyone but our daughter from now on. My ex actually told my daughter the sentiment behind my last message to him. She called me asking why I think dad values his fiancée over her. What the heck? I had her promptly put him on the phone for a conversation about what's appropriate for kids to understand about grown-up disagreements. He disagreed, while stating that she doesn't understand social nuances of the party invitation while thinking she should be privy to my message. He also said his point about the introduction was just an excuse for me not to come. In the end, I told him to not throw me or his fiancée under the bus when he could just say to me, "You're not welcome, don't come," and then apologize to my daughter for her getting more involved than necessary in an adult misunderstanding. Ugh, why did I ever have kids with that man? Not the jerk. Divorced dad here with kids. It's not about you or your husband, it's about your daughter. Honestly, if his daughter wants her mom there, the father should put his feelings aside and welcome you for the sake of his daughter. It's called co-parenting. He should want to make his daughter happy, especially on her birthday. The fact that he's not doing this speaks volumes for his character. Also, using a kid's birthday party to have the two families meet for the first time is weird to me. That's just one more thing that takes the attention away from the birthday girl. You're the jerk if you attend. I understand not wanting to hurt your daughter's feelings, but take this time to make it a teaching moment. I'm divorced as well, and I always respect my ex's wishes if he asks me not to come to a family event that's about the kids. Unfortunately, this is the way life is now. You don't speak to his family anymore, so there's no reason, other than your daughter, to go. You're taking her to do something fun on her birthday, and that's enough. Am I the jerk if I get mad over my husband not doing the dishes? I'm female 24, and my husband is male 22. We've been married officially and living together for 3 months now. It's been great, but one major issue we have is the dishes. Now, I don't want to play the sympathy card, but recently I've been working 55-hour weeks and he's only working 35 to 40. I know it doesn't seem like much, but most nights I come home exhausted or sick from something I picked up at work to make dinner and run the budget, things like that. And when I come home, he's playing guitar, video games, or watching TV. When we first moved in together, we had an agreement that if I cook, he'll do the dishes. But recently, it's been all on me to cook, to do dishes, to clean the entire kitchen while he does the bare minimum. Yes, he can organize things and take out bins once or twice a week, but it is still not enough. I brought it up recently that I'm feeling overwhelmed, and he told me that me asking him to do the dishes every day annoys him, since his mom used to volunteer him to do dishes when he lived with her and nagged him for hours on end until it was done. She also cut off his bedroom electric if he didn't do the dishes. He says he feels he chips in more than enough. I told him he's a grown man with his own house, and if he's not willing to share chores, then I'll stop doing my part, and he'll see how much I actually do compared to him. So I've stopped doing dishes. 3 days in, and the sink is full and the kitchen stinks. Apparently, it makes me the jerk, according to him and our friends, but I feel like I need to stand my ground. Am I the problem? Not the jerk, but this is exactly why people should live together before marriage. You find this stuff out much sooner. He should be doing more, that much is obvious. Problem is, he doesn't care. Telling him you won't do anything has had no effect. Talking has had no effect. So how far are you willing to go? How much of a deal breaker is this for you? That's what you need to think about. Not the jerk. Should ask him if he thought you married a husband or adopted a pet. If he isn't willing to pull his weight as a husband, then you will be returning him to the pound. OP. Part of me is glad I've lost my pregnancies before now. Couldn't in this moment imagine him as a father. Not the jerk. Is it too late to get the marriage annulled? He doesn't want to be an adult or a team player. He wants you to be his new mummy that looks after him but doesn't give him chores to do. I don't see this marriage lasting. Honestly, maybe you'll be embarrassed to let people know you made a mistake, but it's better than living with that mistake for the next 60 years, and you need better friends. Edit. Also, it should have been a big red flag when his own mother had to find extreme measures to get him to be an adult, just to do the dishes. It wasn't like she was making him clean the whole house. It was just the dishes. You're the jerk. Since everyone here is assuming you're telling us the whole story, when it's obvious you're leaving quite a bit out, I'm going with you're the jerk. If your husband told the story, I can guarantee you his version would sound very different than yours. The only question is, who are we going to believe? And let's be honest, since this is Reddit, everyone will assume you're the one telling the truth. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.